Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 12.
Episode 12. Woo! I have no interesting facts about 12.
Well, in lieu of interesting facts about the number 12, let's dive right into our follow-up from last time.
Okay.
So, I'll let you go first here. You'd put something in. I don't know what that's about.
So, birthday party follow-up. Because we got such great, wonderful feedback from everybody commiserating with us about little kid birthday parties. So just an interesting thing happened the other day, and this is the first time this has happened to us, is that my daughter, who apparently is the center of her social circle, was invited to 2 birthday parties, again, on the same day, but this time they're overlapping.
Oh, no.
They conflict. They're mutually exclusive.
So what did you do?
So obviously, as rational adults, we had to sit down and come up with a fair, just, and quantifiable way to evaluate which birthday was more important and then decide which one we were going to RSVP, which one we were going to politely decline, and for what reasons.
And
we picked the one that was closer to our house.
I knew it. I could feel you building up to a good answer like that. Yes. But of course you didn't tell Jane that.
Oh, of course not. No. And she keeps... This is the worst part, is that we told her, okay, we're going to Kid B's birthday party. And she, all week, Ben, at least once a day, every day, all week. Yay, we're going to Kid A's birthday party. No.
Oh, no.
Jane.
No.
We're going to Kid B's birthday party. We just have to keep pounding that into her. All
right. So that was that, huh?
That was my birthday party follow-up, yep. It's just
okay,
little kid birthday parties continue to be terrible. They continue to be an inconvenience for me as an adult, and now they're coming in larger groups.
Well, if I can offer you a ray of hope, it gets better as they get older.
Yeah.
It becomes more their problem than yours.
I'm hoping that is the case, yes.
So, if you remember, back in November, my daughter had gotten hit by a car on the way to school.
I'm glad you've elevated the language of that, because you were really trying to downplay it when you were telling me the story the first time.
Yeah, well, and she hasn't had any long-term health impacts or anything like that. We'll see once the weather warms up and they start riding their bikes to school again if she just keeps begging for a ride or taking the bus, or if she can get back on that horse. I'm hoping she will, but she tends to be my most anxious child. But that's not where I wanted to go with this. So the other night I get out of work, and it was early release because there was a big ice storm coming to the area. And just the parking situation where I work is really terrible. And so I tend to park in the parking lot behind the building and in the middle of the lot, which means I kind of have to jaywalk to get across the street instead of going down to the corner and taking the crosswalk and, waiting and all that.
Shame on you.
And I normally am very fastidious about not causing problems as I cross the street. I look for an opening where no driver in either direction will have to slow down. And if I need to, I run across the street so that I'm not disruptive jaywalking. Not like,
right.
Hey, you got to stop because I'm in your way and you're not going to hit me with your car. Not to mention I'm wearing camouflage and it was dark out and raining.
Yeah, but you recognize that you're doing something against the rules. And so you're going to try to deconflict with the people who are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. And then the thing that happened to my daughter when she got hit by a car happened to me.
You got hit by a car?
I got too close. I got too close to the curb, and behind me, and I wasn't looking behind me, the driver stopped. And then that caused the driver coming at me in the opposite direction to stop, and I'm in this situation where I don't want to cross yet, but now drivers in both directions have stopped. Except on the opposite side of the street, the driver that had stopped, the driver behind him did not notice.
Oh, no. No.
Yeah. And I saw it happening as I was about halfway across the street, and there's this giant truck barreling down on this car that stopped for me where there's no crosswalk.
Oh, no.
Like, probably going 25 miles an hour. And I see it, and I just take off at a run to get out of the road. And I hear the screeching, and I look over and see this truck, and as he pulls and hits the curb, basically, he probably damaged his wheels.
Oh, man.
And bad on him for, just not paying attention. But I felt terrible. I thought, I failed to execute on that. And I was blaming my daughter, for her mishap, but it was the same kind of thing. There was somebody that was being polite but not following the rules, and because somebody wasn't following the rules, it was unexpected, and it just brought about chaos.
And what's even worse is that if like if they had gotten in an accident and then like the police had to be called to do an investigation for the insurance and everything, there's going to be eyewitnesses that say, oh, well, we stopped because this guy darted out into the road running full blast across, not at a crosswalk, because that's what everybody would have seen was you now running through the road where you're not supposed to be.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I felt terrible about it. And I'm not going to stop parking in that lot, but I'm definitely going to be more fastidious about avoiding eye contact with oncoming drivers so that no one stops when I don't want them to.
So being Ben Rich, you obviously went up to the guy's car and knocked on the window and apologized profusely and then wrote him like a thank you card and sent him a basket of muffins or something?
If they'd actually made contact with the driver in front of them, I would have. I would have gone and been involved. But because all he did was hit the curb, I just took off and let him deal with it. And they were gone by the time I got to my car, so I figured they just wrote it off and yeah, everyone hopefully came away from that the wiser. But I told you that so I could tell you this. So I get home from work, and I'm still kind of shaken up by it because I just felt like I'd made a bad decision and almost hurt somebody. And I went to tell my wife about it, and she goes, hey, I got this letter from Geico today. I'm like, Geico? That's not even our insurance company. She's like, yeah, remember after Russia got hit by a car last November, we got contacted by the insurance company, the girl that hit her with the car on the way to school? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, they've been working with TRICARE to pay off for medical bills, but I got this letter from them today offering us a settlement. I'm like, a settlement? We didn't even ask them for anything. She's like, yeah, they want to give us $500. All we got to do is sign this release. I'm like, sign it!
Oh, you see, I don't know. This opens up the question of, why are they offering me $500 unsolicited? Like, what is this actually worth?
The adjuster called it an inconvenience settlement. So they weren't saying that, it was for any particular thing. It was just like, here's $500 to buy some goodwill since our insuree hit your daughter with her car.
Since our insuree hit a little girl in a school zone's crosswalk, and this could be a huge problem for us.
So, and I'm in favor of this. I'm wholly in favor of this approach because when I was 22, 23, I got hit by a car on the way to school, and not only did the insurance company not pay for anything, but they harassed me about it like it was my fault. I was on a bike, and the driver pulled in front of me and then cut in front of me, and I went across his hood and wiped out on the ground. It messed me all up. And they just harassed me constantly. I had to get a lawyer and go through a settlement. And I finally got the money, and the lawyer got most of it. And I just came away from it sour. And they ended up paying out $5,000 when all I'd asked for was $3,000. And instead, I got $2,500, and the lawyer got all of it.
That's how lawyers work. Yes, that's why you have billboards of in an accident. Give us a call. The money that you were going to get anyway.
They offered us money we weren't even asking for. So $500, thank you, Geico.
Yeah. All right. So me being the jerk that I am, I'm seeing this letter for $500, and I immediately know in my head, if I call this number at the bottom of this page, I guarantee you, Ben, the person in the call center is probably authorized to give you $2,500 just to get you to hang up.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Any company whose the origin of their name, the G stands for government, is probably pretty bureaucratic.
Oh, please. Yeah, but not this. Like, yeah, because they're so bureaucratic and they're so big, like, you think $2,500 is going to even, like, be a blip on their radar?
It doesn't mean they can't hit you with piles of paperwork and paralyzing bureaucracy. I don't want to do that. No. I call if we're doing Ben versus bureaucracy, I'm calling this one a win. Do nothing, get $500. That's a win.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We got to mark that as a win. You're right.
All right. So I know you'd kind of been working up for a while to run a half marathon, and that happened this last week. So I want to hear your debrief.
So this is my standard thing. I have found that I am more likely to stick with the training regimen if I have looming deadlines, or just that little guy in the back of my head saying, hey, you could watch TV.
We talked about this in episode 3, I think.
Yeah, and we've never followed up on yours.
Or 4.
We need to talk about your fitness routine, how you're doing.
Maybe next time.
Get a couple runs in before then, try to pad the resume a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the event that I sign up for every year. I've already signed up for the same run next year because it's super cheap if you sign up like right after you do it. And it's tough training through the holidays. And I was doing a really good job. Like I was getting 6 miles in at least 3 times a week. I had like 1 or 2 long runs up to 8 miles in. But a half marathon is 13 miles, and I really wanted to get like 1 or 2 10-mile runs under my belt before I went for the 13. And just the way the schedule shook out, I was not able to do that. So I showed up on race day, A little underprepared, but knowing that I was underprepared. And so I dialed.
Now, hang on a sec, because you've done this a lot. Have you ever had a time where this same kind of scenario happened, where you didn't quite meet your training regimen like you'd hoped? Or is this the first time?
No, this is the second year in a row, which really... Oh, actually, no, it might be the third year in a row. Oh, dear. So 2 years ago, I think, I skipped it entirely because training regimen wasn't up to par. There was no way I was going to be able to run it, so forget it. Then
Didn't even do the race.
Didn't even waste anybody's time showing up. Last year, when I picked up my race packet, because I still pick up the race packet because you get a free shirt and stuff, I asked them, I signed up, I signed up for the half, but I'm really lazy and out of shape.
You just shook my faith in every person I ever seen wear a half marathon shirt from now on.
Oh, no, this gets better. Wait for this one. Last year, I got all my stuff, and I went up to the help me, like the big fix it sign over in the corner. So I signed up for the half marathon, but I'm kind of fat and lazy. Is there any way I can just run the 10K instead? Which is, only 6 miles. And they're like, oh yeah, sure, no problem, because the 10K is cheaper. So all they did is they went in the computer and they flipped one toggle switch from 13 miles to 5K. Or, sorry, 10K.
And they use like those RF things that they stick on you so it just tracks you when you cross the finish line?
Yeah, exactly. But okay. Here's the kicker, is then you go into the merch section. And this was the first year I'd ever seen it. But they always have merchandise and T-shirts and hats and everything with the brand of the race that you're running. And this is the Rock and Roll Half Marathon. So it's a really big series. They have a lot of really good swag. This was the first year I saw they had T-shirts that said, from a distance, it looks like a blurred out 13.1. But when you walk up real close to it, it's got in tiny print the names of every single person that ran the half marathon.
Yours was on it?
And of course my name is on it because I signed up for it like a year in advance. But I didn't run the half marathon. But I
guess they kind of are willing to take that risk when they print the shirts.
I bought 2 of them. I wear them.
Uh-oh, Josh changes registration. That's it. Throw the shirts away. Burn them and run a new print run.
How dare you, sir? These are nice shirts. My name is on it. I paid for my name to be on it. Nowhere of this shirt does it say these people actually ran the 13.1.
Yeah.
No, I get it. It's super hypocritical, and I shouldn't. But I do. I ran it this year, and I didn't buy the shirt, so that balances out, right?
Karma has been restored.
Yeah, there it is. It was weighing on me. But now the problem is, like, because I was underprepared. All right, perfect. This is karma getting back at me for wearing the shirt that I didn't earn. It's because after the race, immediately after the race, I felt fine. I felt tired, and like I was I crossed the finish line saying I was not prepared for that, and felt kind of.
What was your time?
Why would you ask me that?
Come on.
It was like 2 hours and 10 minutes.
It's not terrible.
No, but I mean, it's not great either. Anywho, that day, like I recovered and I was doing all right. But now, starting on Monday and all this week, my foot has been killing me. Like I think I bruised a bone in my foot near my ankle, and I'm like limp.
Have you been to the doctor?
No, of course not. I haven't been to the doctor. I'm a man. No, if it still hurts next week, I probably will, just so they can say, oh, you need to get an x-ray. And then I'll go get an x-ray. And they'll be like, oh, it doesn't show up on x-ray. You need to get a CAT scan. And then I'll just time out and be like, if it's soft tissue, it's soft tissue. I'm out. I'm done. Like, that's the problem. I'm just going to get the runaround. Unless it's actually broken.
At least you're an accountant now instead of pool service.
Oh, yeah. That would have been a problem, wouldn't it? Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I get to sit at my cushy desk and do maths all day.
So what are you going to do next year for your half marathon? You going to be ready? Or are you going to make it 4 in a row?
So this is the thing. I'm usually pretty good. Heading into November, I'm training good. Like 3 times a week, like clockwork, got good runs going. And then Thanksgiving hits. And you're like, well, I can take a couple of days off here. That'll be no problem.
Trust me. That's exactly what I did.
And then it rolls right into Christmas. And then it rolls right into New Year's. And then like, oh, hey, by the way, the race is the 3rd weekend in January. It's like, oh, crap, I've been slipping.
Yeah, well, 2:10 isn't terrible. That's like, 9:05 or something like that. It splits. It's not bad.
No, 2 hours is 9:17. So 2:10 is a little bit better than 10-minute miles.
Okay. All right, I'm going to do something a little bit out of place in the show here. I normally savor self-promotion till the end, but there's been some changes lately, so I want to invite our audience. So the first thing is, if you're listening to the show right now or you're doing something else and you have access to your phone, just go on Facebook, go to the Bad at Magic Facebook page and like our page right now. If you haven't done it yet, please show your support and like the page. It doesn't cost you anything, and we're not advertising to you, and we make a big effort to put on content that you might find amusing or funny or that you want to interact with. Second, we started up a YouTube page, but that isn't for everyone. I think for now it's just going to be magic content up there. So if you're interested in finding out why Ben and Josh call this podcast Bad at Magic, you can go to our YouTube site and check out. So it's also Bad at Magic on YouTube. If you want to join in the discussion, go on the subreddit. There we've already had some good discussions break out on topics that were going. We started a thread there last week about Josh's antisocial approach to Drive-thru, and maybe we'll talk more about that in a minute. And now we are on Patreon, and that's new this week. Go to patreon.com/badatmagic. If you want to show your support for the show, please, Mom, this means you. If you like us and you want to show us, just go on and sign up to, give us a couple of dollars a month and show your support for the show. And we appreciate anyone who goes on Patreon and show their support.
Ben does a great job of engaging the audience and wanting feedback and participation and getting us out into social media and everything. And I want to back him up in all of that. And I'm going to be the other side of the conversation and be like, if you don't want to go on, join the conversation on Reddit. If you don't want to like us on Facebook, if you don't know what YouTube is, that's fine. Tell your friends. Like, hey, I listen to these two jerks talk to each other, and sometimes they're somewhat funny. You should try it out too. That's pretty easy to do, right?
Yes, I love it. I love that other perspective. If you don't want to do any of that stuff, fine. Just we thank you for listening.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so that brings me to Bad at English. So for Bad at English this week, it was reminding me of this conversation I had one time, and I had a little bit of a hard time doing some etymology on this one, so I'm gonna speculate a bit. I was talking to a friend of mine, a woman that I worked with, and I asked her a question that she probably should have known the answer to, and I think she was a little bit embarrassed that she didn't know the answer, and she said, "Ask me one on showbiz." And I'm like, what? Because it was kind of non sequitur, like it wasn't really related to what we were talking about. I'm like, what does that mean? Ask me one on showbiz. She's like, oh, well, it means that I probably should have known the answer to your question. It was too complicated, so ask me one on showbiz means ask me something I know about. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, so what if I say that? She's like, oh, no, you wouldn't say ask me one on showbiz. I'm like, why not? She's like, that's the female version. I said, well, what's the male version? And she said, the male version is ask me one on sport. So if she asked me a question, I'm embarrassed I don't know the answer, I would say ask me one on sport.
It's very interesting that this phrase is gender bias. First, that's not something that you see every day. And it's not something you really see in English a whole lot. There's not verbs that change based on the gender of the person that you're referring to. And at the same time, ask me one on sport is so totally not the phrase that I would use to ask me a question I know.
Okay, great. So that leads me to what I wanted to say next, and this is my speculative etymology. So in the UK, they have this game show that's very popular in the way that Jeopardy is in the States. That's like a quiz show, but instead of going in and getting asked random categories, you actually tell them in advance what you want to be asked questions about, and then you go on the quiz show and they ask you questions about the thing you said you know a lot about. So if the thing you know a lot about is the 1937 Yankees, you tell them that, and then you go on the show and they ask you questions about the 1937 Yankees. Or if it's, I don't know, Warhammer 40K or the United States Air Force Academy, you tell them that and say, ask me one on the Air Force Academy. So that's my speculation for why this phrase means that.
Man, you called me a nerd and foreshadowed the rest of the podcast in one example. That was well done.
Yes. So what would yours be? If you were going to go on Mastermind and you wanted to say, ask me one on, what would the answer be?
Oh, man, you have asked me this before, I think. And
I know.
These are the...
So you've had some time to think about it.
Oh, trap me in the corner. My own devising. Now, these are those interesting hypothetical questions that are much easier to answer when I'm not taking them seriously. But these are also the kinds of questions that I love to take so seriously, Ben. So what is the thing that I am confident in that I believe I know more about than anyone else? Is that kind of like the crux of the question, or just enough to like win a game show?
If you were going to go on a quiz show and you were going to stake the potential to win a fortune on the fact that some strangers would come up with some questions about something they thought might be difficult for you and would probably be easy for you, what would it be?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with the Wheel of Time series of books.
By Robert
by
Jordan.
Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. He finished up the series. I have listened to and read those books. I'm on my fifth or sixth run through actually right now. And so, and I also have a very high retention rate for books. So every scene that comes into my ears, I remember what's going to happen, but I'm still listening to it and love it anyway. So I feel like I really know the minutia of that world.
So if I were to say to you, Josh, what was the name of the property in Colorado Springs that was bought by the United States government to found that U.S. Air Force Academy, and you didn't know the answer, you might say, ask me one on the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, there you go. Because I would definitely do not know the answer to that question. Actually, wait a minute. I do know the answer to that question. It's a trick. It's a trick question. Do you want to get into that now?
No, we'll save that for later. Oh. But I love that you think you know the answer. If you were to ask me the question, what would I want to be my quiz topic on Mastermind? I would probably say Mormon doctrine. I've spent tens of thousands of hours studying the doctrines of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I would be pretty comfortable that a non-member stranger thinking they were asking me tough questions about that probably couldn't stump me.
I am not at all surprised, Mr. wearing a BYU shirt right as we speak.
Yes, sir. Okay. So last time we talked about your drive-thru rules, and I was hoping maybe we could get a listener or two to try it and tell us about their experience. That didn't happen, so we're going to have to substitute something else. My son, who just last year worked 6 months in the McDonald's drive-thru, listened to the podcast, and he was beside himself listening to you describe your drive-thru rules. He could not take it. He would keep pausing it and coming to me like, Dad, he can't do this. I'm like, oh, he can, and he does.
I would love to hear your, what is he, 16, 17?
He's 18 now.
Oh, he's 18 now. I would love to hear your 18-year-old tell me to my face what I can and can't do.
Well, he said part of it was like, I was imagining what I want to do, and I was imagining what I would do. He was like, I guess I would call my manager, but I don't know how that would fix the problem if Josh took that approach.
It wouldn't. And it has happened to me before. The manager either says it a little more forcefully or tries to be more real. Like, they take an approach it just doesn't work. Like, you can't...
And it's scenarios like this that bring out the differences in people, even me and my son. Like, I thought he was like me, but when I was at work the drive-thru at Taco Bell, if one of my customers had pulled up and been like, sir, can you please pull forward, bring out your food to you? And he's like, nah, I'll just stay here. I'd look at him for a sec. In my mind, I would go through the conversation with my manager and how long it would take to make his food, and I would just go total, hippie sanguine about it. And be like, all right, man, whatever. Right on.
That's the only thing you can do in that situation. Otherwise, it's just a waste of everybody else's time.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes minimum wage employees have a chip on their shoulder, and they want to assert their authority over you. That's why they spit in your burger.
That's fine. Does this look like spit to you? Yes, it does. Well, whatever. I'm gonna eat it. So, tell me, what would your son have done in this scenario, or what does he think I was doing wrong, or what is the feedback that you got from him?
So. He's like, I might escalate with the manager, but probably it would just work out in his favor, and I would just come away from it really frustrated.
Yeah.
Like feeling like a victim.
A victim? Like I'm victimizing?
Yeah.
That's a strong word.
Yeah. Well, he made it sound like, I'm trying to do my job here. I'm following my part, and I just need you to follow your part. And for you to say, no, I'm not going to do my part, it doesn't fit the agreement. The agreement.
My part is I pulled up to the speaker box. I ordered the food that I wanted. It was all on menu. I pulled to the first window. I paid the fee that I was requested to pay. I went to the second window. I expect to be delivered food. I don't expect to be told to leave and then maybe we'll bring out your food if you're lucky. Like, that's not the deal.
When you say it like that, it almost seems like they're welching on the bet. Like, you gave us your money, and now we're telling you to go away without giving your food.
Yeah.
It does make you look like the victim.
Yeah, it's a Mexican standoff. Are you really going to bring me my food?
Well, and he forgets that my daughter and I sat in the drive-thru for 30 minutes one night because we came to see him at work and place an order. They asked us to pull forward for like a burger and 2 drinks or something like that, and we pulled forward, and they forgot about us and never came out.
Do you know why they forgot about you, Ben? Because they had to delete you off of the little computer thing that's tracking your order, because until they do, it's still tracking the time. So when you pull forward...
So this is the fundamental law of economics.
Yeah.
People respond to incentives.
No, this is,
and if you got minimum wage employees and you're tracking their drive-through statistics, then
are the minimum,
they're going to do things like that.
Did your son see a cent more on his paycheck because of some incentivized payment plan for optimizing drive-through throughput? No, he didn't see a penny of that. That all went to the managers.
No. It's like you said, it's all middle managers. Okay, so I got a story about that. So when I used to work at Taco Bell, they hadn't quite gotten to McDonald's level, solutions to these kind of problems at corporate headquarters back home. But they did track our drive-through statistics, and it got reported to the regional manager. So there was a computer with a magnetic gravity sensor in the ground that could tell how long a car was sitting outside the window. And it would just track for each instance of a car pulling up, and then after 20 cars had gone through, it just recorded a statistic, and that was our average service time, and that got reported to the manager, and they had goals and whatever. That was all management stuff. But it caused the managers to crack the whip and tell the employees to make food faster, get the cars through, and do other things. We definitely weren't to the please pull forward stage yet. And I definitely think it's unscrupulous if you're just using that to pad your numbers because you're not making the food fast enough, as opposed to using that to solve the problem of getting big orders out of the way so you can produce more small orders faster. Now, my manager had already proven to me that he was very unscrupulous, because I think I was 16 or 17 at the time, and one night he ran out of cigarettes that he used to smoke on his break, and he couldn't leave the restaurant, so he sent me to go to the local convenience store and buy him cigarettes while I was still on the clock.
Wow.
So it's violating like 5 company policies and several laws. I'd never bought nor tried to buy cigarettes in my life, but I'd heard that they ID you if you're a minor. So I'm like, Bob, they're not going to let me buy cigarettes. I'm not even old enough. He's like, Ben, just go buy the cigarettes. Here's the money. Stop talking back to me. Bob was like Cajun from New Orleans.
There's no way Bob sounded like that. Ben.
Yeah, that is exactly how Bob sounds.
Listen, Ben,
go buy me some smokes. I want. He wanted, I forget what brand it was. It was Lucky Strike Menthol,
of course it
or
was.
something.
I
was like, so whatever. All right, Bob, I'll go buy your cigarettes. I was like, okay, I'm not working. I'm still on the clock. Whatever, I'll go to the store. So I went in, and I wanted to be carded so bad, Josh. I wanted them to not sell me the cigarettes. I was really hoping for the other minimum wage employee in the convenience store to pull through.
Nope. System failed you.
So I come up to the counter. And I'm like, I'd like some Lucky Strike menthols or whatever. I don't remember what they were. He probably smoked Camels. Anyway, and the guy was like, sure, man, $4.50. I was like, I'm not old enough to buy these. He's like, I don't care. I'm like, they're not for me. He's like, whatever, man, just give me the money. I was like, all right. So he sold me cigarettes, and I took them and gave them to Bob.
You made that sound like a reverse holdup. Like... It's like
we're being recorded. The government's going to audit this tape. Whatever. Just get out of here, kid. Here's your cigarettes. So that's the kind of guy I'm working for. So one night, I think I worked my first late shift, and Bob was on, and he'd probably been getting beat up about his drive-through numbers, and he didn't do anything to actually improve speed of service. But after the evening rush cleared out, I saw Bob go outside with an empty coffee pot. I'm like, what the heck's he doing? It was one of those like coffee pots that you put on the commercial coffee maker that keeps the coffee warm all day, and it has like a steel bottom.
Oh no, he was.
And he goes out.
Seriously. He was out here.
He goes out in the drive-thru and he sets the coffee pot down on the sensor, and it starts the clock like there's a car out there. It even sounds the tone in my headset like a car's pulled up to the window. And I'm looking out the window at him, and he sets it down. He kind of like counts to 10, and he picks it up, and then he sets it down again and counts to 10, and he picks it up and he sets it down, and he does like 20 of these 10-second entries into the database, and then comes back inside.
Is Bob aware that that's like ridiculously easy to audit? Like, hey, how come your statistics show that you had 453 cars go through the drive-thru and your receipts only show you had 12 orders last night?
Yeah, I don't know. And he kept doing it. Like, this was a common practice for him. I think one time he handed me the coffee pot. He's like, Ben, go outside and do 20 cars. Or something like that.
Ben. Ben, go do the cars.
So... It was me and Bob and 15 Mexicans, and that was my time at Taco Bell. And if you had pulled up in the driveway and told me, pulled up in the drive-thru and told me you wouldn't get out of the way, I'd have been like, whatever, man. Whatever.
All right. So, dear God, there's always so much to unpack with your stories. But, like, all of that aside, I guess. So... Where did your I'm going to bring us back around. Where did your son land on this whole thing? Like, yeah, he seemed frustrated with it, but like, what's he going to do about it? Like, what can he do about it?
Nothing. That's what he arrived at the end. At the end, he was kind of like, unless he's going to like allow me to escalate or cause a problem of some sort, he's just going to outlast me.
Yeah, I'm in comfortable air conditioning, seated. I got my radio. Like, you're standing, you're on the clock. Like, that's just, I'm more relaxed than you are.
Yeah, and the person behind you doesn't know what's going on. They're not going to blame you. They're going to blame the people inside the store.
Why aren't they making his fries? Like, I know. Why aren't they making my fries? Well, there you go. That's a good follow-up for the passive-aggressive, non-compliant drive-through pull forward.
Yeah. All right. So we got a couple of bad at parenting queued up here, so give me what you got for bad at parenting.
I don't know if this is bad at parenting. This is more just like an interesting parenting story. Maybe it's bad. I'm not sure. Let's find out. So remember, it was early. It was like episode 2 or 3 where we were discussing kids with cell phones, and I was concerned because I feel like my son's like he's being exposed to cell phones and he's asked for a cell phone before. And like it's almost getting to the point where maybe he should have the ability to contact somebody in case of an emergency.
So remind the audience how old he is.
So my son is 8. He is in the 2nd grade. And yes, dear listeners, he is already seeing his friends that have phones. Like they don't get to use them in school. They go in cubbies or their backpacks or something. But they have full-up freaking phones. I think it's a little too early for that.
We're talking like iPhone 11s here or just like kiddie models?
I asked my son, like to him, it's some magic glowing tablet. Like he has no idea what the make and model is.
All right, he doesn't know what their model number
Right, exactly. He's telling me that these kids have phones, and like he has only ever seen a smartphone, so I'm assuming it's a touchscreen smartphone. Maybe their parents just gave them iPod touches from 2004 and just didn't tell them that it's not a phone. I don't know.
But I recall from our discussion that you were anxious about this. Like you were afraid he was going to want one earlier than you wanted to give it to him, and you weren't sure you were ready to take on all the problems. But conversely, you do recognize some utility to him having one. So what did you decide to do?
Okay, so what we decided to do, and what it was my wife that found this thing I think it's a great middle ground, like a great compromise. And it's this thing that Verizon has, and I don't want to pitch like specific brands, but it's the only one I know of, and it's called the Gizmo. And it's a watch, and it's a really big watch. It looks like a standard smartwatch. It's square, and it's a little thicker than you would expect it to be. But it's got a full-up SIM card. It connects to the cell data network. He can receive phone calls on it. He can send and receive text messages on it. And it does GPS geo-tracking and geo-fencing, which I'm a big fan of. But it's also...
So this shows that there is a considerable market out there for this exact niche.
Yes, and it's super nice because it's not like they recognize that it's for kids. It's for kids. All the buttons on it are really big. All the icons are very easy to identify. And he cannot make outgoing phone calls. And he can only receive messages and phone calls from a handful of people that we have to authorize. We have a companion app that is on our phone. My wife got the primary one, and then she made me an administrator. And so we can add and remove the people that he's allowed to message. It doesn't have a keyboard. He can only select from a handful of predetermined like text messages or emojis. And he can only receive phone calls. It's perfect. This is exactly what we wanted him to have. Just so it's...
How much a month does it cost?
This was the thing. Out of the store, it was like $200, and then it's $5 a month for the connection. And then, of course, what they got us with the... there's insurance on it. Oh, the insurance is like $7 a month. And I'm like, well, I mean, he's not really going to break it. And then my wife goes, he's 8. I'm like, okay, what's the deductible on the insurance? Oh, the deductible on the insurance to replace the watch for whatever reason, they don't care, is $15.
All right, if you do the cost-benefit analysis on this $7 insurance, I want to see it. This is your challenge as an accountant. You went to school. You're going to become a full-up CPA. I want to see the cost-benefit analysis on the $7 insurance because my gut tells me it's not worth it.
Well, you can. It's all a factor of how often he breaks the stupid thing, right?
Sure.
So, and then there's the non.
If they make good on their part of the deal.
Well, they do usually because I used to have, when I was a pool guy, shockingly, I had the replacement insurance on my phone in case I dropped it into, I don't know, large bodies of water that I was constantly walking around. So
yeah.
the insurance isn't bad.
So how long has he had it now?
He's had it for probably a month now. He wears it to school.
All right, what's the verdict?
Good. Thumbs up. I'm gonna give it 1.5.
All right.
1.5 thumbs up. And it does what we want it to do. Like, it tracks his location in case he gets lost or taken. It tells us when he's at school. It tells us when he's at home. It's perfect. He's not a latchkey kid yet, but that'll be very important when he becomes one. When he starts doing after-school activities that he takes himself to, like around the school, it'll be nice to know if he leaves certain jurisdictions. Like, these are all good things that I want to have. So as a way of trying to get him comfortable with us, like trying to transition him into being more independent, and we are now comfortable trying to do that because he has this way to contact us in an emergency, we've been experimenting with giving him a little more independence, a little more space. So the way that we're doing that now is that when one of us goes for a run, if he's home, we just leave him home. And we talk to him first, like, hey, I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to be gone for, Mommy's usually gone for like 45 minutes. Daddy's usually gone for about an hour. If anything goes wrong or anything happens, just call us on your watch. He's like, okay, no problem. It's like, great. 2 thumbs up. And we did this like a handful of times and no problems. My wife got the first emergency phone call from the watch when she was on her run. I think it was last week. And she was running. And then her phone starts ringing with Carter's Gizmo number. Like, oh, crap. So she stops dead. Like, he's calling. It's an emergency. And she answers, yes, hello. And she's out of breath. Mommy, my remote control helicopter flew on top of the bookcase.
That's his idea of an emergency.
That was his emergency. He needed Mommy to come home because he couldn't reach his remote control helicopter. And so
awesome.
Yeah, and she explained it was like, okay, we'll go play with something else and then we'll get it when I get home. And he's okay, and then he hangs up and he's fine. But then she tells me, like, she finished her run and then she calls me and we were talking about it. And she tells me this scenario and I'm like, oh, well, we need to really lay the hammer down. Like, this, he can't be calling for just little things. But then she backed me off and realized, but we can't make him afraid to actually call us if he needs us. Like, ooh.
Yeah, that's a dilemma.
Ah, crap. So it went from what I wanted to be, was like a little bit of a stern tirade. It came down to like a back and forth conversation. It's like, hey, this is for like real emergencies, if somebody's in danger or if something bad is happening.
So you had a discussion about what an actual emergency is.
Yeah, we just had to push his threshold up a little higher. So that was, I feel like it was it was a good transition and a good parenting moment or lesson for me, I guess. Don't just bring the hammer down.
Both scenarios in The Boy Who Cried Wolf are kind of bad. You know, if you get somebody who's calling you all the time for no reason, that's bad. But if there's an actual emergency and he doesn't call you, that's also bad.
Yeah, because he's too afraid or like, oh, does this qualify? You don't want that to enter as a calculus.
Yeah, like my 13-year-old son when he watched his sister get hit by a car, and he was just like, I didn't want to bother you guys.
It's like, well, she got up and was walking afterward. There's no blood. She's fine. Like, kids are that, like, there's an age where kids are that way. It's like, oh, please stand up. Don't tell Mom. Just you're fine. You're fine. He probably felt responsible for it, and he thought he was going to try.
Well, that story was definitely not worthy of being called bad at parenting, but I like just putting all of our parenting stories under that.
Okay. Bad at parenting it is.
So this last week was the pre-release for a new Magic set. I want to talk about it for a minute. in a way that probably my mom could still relate to.
Well, that's gonna be tough.
You'd asked me what I thought about Theros Beyond Death. Theros Beyond Death is what Wizards of the Coast does sometimes, where they return in the Magic the Gathering game to a universe that they've done before. The first time we went to Theros, it was this world where we had a pseudo-Greek mythology. So they were drawing upon all your knowledge and background and understanding of like ancient mythology, but then renaming it with their own kind of themes and names and stuff, so that it was all unique but very recognizable and familiar.
Right, and I wasn't around the first time Theros was a thing, and so I had like zero exposure to it. And then we started seeing like they leak this stuff in advance to try to hype up the community to get people excited, so they'll buy product and spend money. And I used to, when I played all the time, and I'm getting back into that stage now, which is scary. But I used to get really amped up for releases. Like I remember we would go to pre-release tournaments where you could actually buy and play with the cards like a week or two in advance. And I would walk into those things having already memorized every card that's in the set, what they look like the art on them.
Wow.
Yeah,
I remember that.
And
that was back when it was a little bit harder to know before the pre-release every card. Now they've kind of just succumbed entirely, and they deliberately spoil through open channels the entire set before you go.
Yes. No, when I was in Magic, like they wouldn't release the full set of cards until I think the night before the pre-release. You would get like drips and drabs. You would know like maybe 15 or 20 of them before that, but the whole set wouldn't be like announced or publicized until like right before. So I would always, that was fun.
Yeah, and the average set's about 250.
Yeah, well, I was single at the time and had some disposable income, and it was fun staying up late the night before, reading all the cards and theory crafting all the interactions. Anyway.
Yeah, I remember driving with you to pre-releases, and you were like just brain dumping on me. Like, oh man, you know about this, you hear about that? And it was just going in one ear and out the other. I'm like, yeah.
That still happens. We were, before the podcast was recording. Yeah, I'm going to tell this story.
We established a template early on in our relationship.
Clearly. And I'm realizing now that it just still keeps going. Before this podcast, like I was a little bit late setting up, and so we started the Skype call, but I was setting up my pillow for it here for recording. And you were playing a game, and you were explaining to me the game state, and I was naming the cards from the abstract like conversation you were trying to have. Still blew your mind.
So you took like, I don't know, 8 years off or something like that, and I kind of played straight through. And I've really gotten into the pattern where it one day has started to blend into the next as far as their cadence of releasing 4 sets a year, and it stopped being like remarkable and exciting to me to get a new set. I just kind of take it in stride. But this one's pretty cool. You know, they brought back sagas, which are enchantments that like tell a story, which are really cool and fit really good into this Greek mythology theme. They brought back the devotion mechanic, which just counts up everything of one color and gives you cool stuff for that, and that's pretty cool. There's this enchantment theme and lots of stuff going on with enchantments. But I think my favorite thing in this new set is these gorgeous full art lands. Have you seen them?
I have. They are pretty. They're a wild departure from the lands that they usually make. So if, for those of you who don't play Magic, like what is it, like a third of your deck? More than that. No, like a third of your deck is going to be lands, which they don't really do anything besides give you the resources to play the cards you want to play. And there's only 5 or 6 basic types. And so they're constantly having to release the same things over and over. And so you get like this giant batch of the same kind of card over and over. And so they're actually now coming up with different ways to make lands cool again.
So there's kind of this like celestial theme to this set, and don't ask me the flavor of it because I don't know.
Greek mythology.
These 5 full art lands look like celestial nebulae, just giant nebulas of stars and clouds of gas that are in the 5 colors of Magic, and they are spectacular. I'll put a link in the show notes. They're really cool to look at.
They do, they have like the celestial bodies, like you're saying, like depicted in the artwork, and they're kind of like constellations that look like the symbols of the mana that the land is supposed to generate. And the reason they did that, Ben, is because Greek mythology is based on the stars. That's what people looked to the stars and created the stories.
Thanks for explaining that.
Come on now.
Yeah. So speaking of Greek mythology, I love that you can just take a set like this and kind of look through the cards and see, even though they've renamed the things, just telling by the art and the mechanics of the card what it's supposed to represent. So I've enjoyed that with this new set, trying to figure out. Like, there's this one creature that's like a warrior that's invulnerable to everything except one thing, and that's supposed to be Achilles.
Right.
And I loved that, like, because they didn't have that in the first set. But to have a creature that's invulnerable to everything except one little thing, that's so cool. That's like just such a great way to use the mechanics of the game to represent Greek mythology.
I agree. I think one of my
there's
go ahead.
There's no, you go ahead with your thought, and then I'll finish mine.
So this is one thing that Magic does in all of their sets that I find very good, is that they string a story through multiple cards. And like, that's hard to explain, but like, there is like a plot line that is happening through this set, and they depict certain key points of the story in the card art and the cards and the card names and that kind of thing. And so this story is revolving around, it's happening in this universe of Theros with all that's based heavily in Greek mythology, but there's this heroine that we have that is Elspeth, who died and is in the underworld and had to fight her way out. And there's multiple cards that show Elspeth like reaching different stages of her conflict and escaping from this underworld. And the story is told not only in like the books and all the companion stuff, but then also you can pick out these probably 15 or 20 cards and lay them out in a line, and it tells the story right there.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. I don't bother to learn that
stuff. Wait. Come on, this one was pretty heavy-handed, even though like the whole.
Yeah, I knew the name Theros Beyond Death was something about someone going to the underworld and trying to get out, but I didn't even know who it was.
It's in like half of the card arts about escaping, and it's all about Elspeth holding that freaking spear, man.
I'm not very observant.
Okay, so this is like we talked about a long time ago, the different types of players. This is showing how Ben just is focused on the mechanics and what's going to help him win the game, being the very spiky guy that he is. And this is the Vorthros side of me, which is the person that loves the flavor and loves the art and the story and just the feel of everything. Like, not necessarily for the gameplay, but just for the story that's happening.
All right, so I'm going to rattle off a few more of the Greek myths I noticed in this set, and then I got one closing thought, and then we'll move on. So there's two the sagas where you put it down and it does something one turn and it does something the next turn that are supposed to tell a story. And the one called A Crowan War is brilliant. It's the Trojan War. You play it, and the first turn it steals one of their creatures, and then the next turn it taps all the creatures, and the next turn everyone dies. And it's just like the Trojan War, and it's fantastic. I love that one. I played with it a few times. It's not great in play, but it's really cool how it tells the story of the Greek myth with the actions in the game.
Yeah, through the mechanics.
Another one's called the First Eroan Games, which is just like the Ancient Olympics. So you play it, and the first turn, like, everybody gets counter, and then the next turn everybody gets flying, and then the next turn everybody, I don't know. Just something cool happens each turn that's very much like a big athletic competition.
The first turn you make a 1/1. The second turn you put 3+1/+1 counters on a creature. The third turn, if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw a card. And the fourth turn you create a gold token. How do you not know this, man?
Yes, I forgot. I played with it too. I got it in one of my drafts, but I like that. In the end, it ends with someone getting a gold, which is fantastic.
Well, and it's hilarious.
They really should pat themselves on the back.
That is a good one. First of all, like, that's one of the only sagas I think that have 4 ticks instead of 3. Most sagas have 3 and they die. This one has 4, so it makes it interesting already. And the fourth one is like that gold. The gold token is a thing that has existed in the game, but it existed like sets and sets and sets ago. And this is the only card in this entire set that even references gold tokens. So they literally
brilliant. Those guys are geniuses.
Yeah, they broke their own rules, but like in this case, it was perfect because it just fits so well flavor wise.
I'm sure they were sitting around brainstorming this in the room, and they're like, "Well, what do we do to make it really feel like the Olympics?" There was a couple others. There's one called Mirror Shield that removes indestructible and kills. And then kills a creature with Death Touch or something like that. It's it's flavorful of like Perseus and Medusa, and the art on it even looks like Perseus and Medusa.
So Death Touch is a common mechanic in the game where it doesn't matter how big or how small the creature is. The creature with Death Touch kills the creature that doesn't have Death Touch, even if it dies in the process. So this is one of the only cards I've ever seen that actually references the creature that doesn't have Death Touch lives, and the creature that does have Death Touch dies. And that, like you said, that's the whole Medusa thing.
Yeah, it reverses it. And then there's one called Wings of Hubris, which is reminiscent of the story of Icarus, where you put on these wings that give you flying, but if you overuse them, then you fall.
I think if you can give it flying once, and then like the wings are sacrificed, and I think you have to kill the creature after that or something. Very flavorful. Not very useful in the game.
Very flavorful of the myth.
This is the second. Well, this is the second set in a row where they've done like a full top-down design, where they started with like the story that they wanted to tell, and then they built the cards kind of after that, instead of the other way around, where they figure out the mechanics and what the cards are going to be, and then they try to work a story into it. This one is Theros, obviously the hardcore Greek mythology stuff. So they started with that and worked their way down into the enchantments and the sagas and the Acroan War and the Aronin games. And then the last set that came out was Throne of Eldraine. They did the same thing with Grimm's Fairy Tales. So at first, I don't know. I was wishy-washy. That the last set that came out was the first one that had come out when I was getting back into it. And I didn't know how well it was going to, like, oh, they're doing a storybook set? That's kind of weird. But it turned out to be great, and all the flavor is wonderful. And this one, I think, is also a good one. Like, so far, I'm 2 for 2 for the top-down design stuff.
Yeah, I'm all right with it. Ultimately, the way that I mostly interact with it is in playing the game. And so to me, the main thing is it fun to play with? And so it is. Now, there's one other thing I want to say before we move on about Magic, and that is it's starting to become obvious to me in just the way almost against my will, my consumption of Magic has the ratio of real life cardboard face-to-face Magic to online Magic has slowly started to creep up to more time online and less time with cardboard.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's by accident.
No.
I think that's by design.
Are you really just going to like read the article that I wrote on our website back to me now? Is that what's happening?
No, that was pretty much it.
Okay.
It was a good
article. I have a whole article about how like I'm theorizing. Like my working hypothesis is that with the different setups that you can play online and how they're pushing players to, like just with the tournament structure that they're picking, like this tournament is going to be this format, this tournament's going to be this format. It feels like they want the standard players, the people that are playing the rotating formats, they want them playing online. And it is a lot easier to get people online, and it is also a lot easier to generate revenue for the company online. And they're trying to push like the older formats be more paper. So like Commander, Legacy, Modern, they're trying to push those to paper. And it makes sense from a player's perspective. Like I don't want to invest heavily in a deck that's going to rotate and not be viable in 3 months. But if I'm going to invest in cardboard cards, like for like a Commander deck, that's going to be good forever.
Do you think it'll be a mistake if they ever go too far and just the in-person cardboard game atrophies to the point where it's not viable anymore and all they have left is online offerings?
There is no doubt in my mind that that day is coming. I don't want it to because I still love playing in cardboard, but there is no way that the online version of this game is... It's got to be geometrically more profitable than...
Profitable, yeah. And you don't got to produce physical product to give to
people.
If
you cut out all the logistics of producing and distributing these cards to retailers, like that just simplifies everything. But at the same time, it removes, like I think, the soul of the game. Like I still love sitting down across from a table to play my opponent. I want to be able to read. I'll never forget...
That's really what it is at stake.
There are games.
The soul of the game.
There are games that you and I have played 10 years ago that I will never forget because of the look on your face when I threw down that time stop and just totally decimated you with it. It was glorious, and you just don't get that in digital.
Online, yeah. So you've played Hearthstone. They don't have physical cards for that game.
So they used to. Kind of. There was a World of Warcraft.
Okay, but not really, right?
Not really, no. Let's just go with that. There's a longer story, but the simple answer is no.
So does the art and the execution and the flavor of it kind of suffer because it wasn't first conceived to be a cardboard game?
So actually, this is They're two inherently different games. I like Magic better, but at the same time, you can feel how Hearthstone wasn't shackled to cardboard, and the decisions that they made with the design and the mechanics reflect that. There's a lot of things that Hearthstone, there like effects and mechanics that happen in Hearthstone that simply cannot happen in paper Magic. Like there's abilities.
Because
go ahead.
You were talking about the soul of the game, and I think the soul of the game isn't just sitting across from a player. It's also that before it was a digital object, it was a piece of cardboard.
Right, and there, even if we're moving to digital, there's still like you can play Magic online, but they're still limited by what you can physically do with a card, because they're never going to make a card that can only exist digitally because they still have to print it in paper. And if you were to if you completely scrap the paper Magic, now you open up realms of mechanics that couldn't exist in hardcore physical paper cards. And so like that will change the game entirely, because there will be things that cannot exist in reality. Like, am I explaining this well? Like for example,
I get it. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, a card only has two sides, and we've had Magic cards that can transform. Like you flip it over and it's something else, or you go fetch a different card and it replaces itself. But if you go digital, there's no limit to what you can transform a single card into. And so now you can have one card that could potentially be 3 or 4 or 5 different things throughout the game, because there's no limit to there's no physical limitation to the card.
So it's like Magic's biggest handicap and also its greatest asset at the same time.
Well, and this is like we talked about before, is the boundaries are what define the game, and like working within those boundaries to find new and exciting ways to play the game. I think that's what makes Magic interesting. Instead of ignoring boundaries and just making something completely new, focus on the limitations. This is Sanderson's second law of Magic. Like the limitations are more important than the magic itself.
Let the limitations be an asset.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well,
that got super deep.
I continue to be bad at Magic, but I like it.
Well, and demonstrably bad at Magic. Go check out our YouTube. We are terrible.
All right. Well, so I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I know I kind of pushed you into it, but please forgive me.
No.
Since the beginning of time, men have created governments which have escalated to conflict and war. And in that, they've tried to best each other by being better at the art of war. You know, from Sun Tzu to Clausewitz to General Patton, men have tried to exceed their enemies in their ability to execute the art of war. And a lot of that depends on your ability to lead your troops into battle. And so that's led to service academies. And this was not invented in the United States of America, but we have a grand tradition of service academies in the United States, dating back to, the United States Military Academy at West Point that was founded in 1802. And when whatever the name of the act was in 1947, they created the United States Air Force. They're like, well, we can just have guys from West Point, if they want, go be Air Force officers. And like, no, we need our own academy. So they stood up the United States Air Force Academy, which is the youngest of the 3 service academies, but they all approximately have the same enrollment, about 4,200 to 4,500 students, depending on the year. And the West Point, Annapolis, and of course USAFA, which was founded in 1954. And you chose to attend the United States Air Force Academy.
I was fortunate and unfortunate enough to attend the 47th class of the Air Force Academy. I think that's what it was.
All right, so I want to delve into that, because you're very much ambiguous about this, like you said, fortunate and unfortunate. So let me ask you some questions about it. Were you determined at a young age to be in the military?
Nope. That's it. You're gonna get yes. So you're gonna get yes and no question answers out of me. That's just no. I'm just kidding. No. So when I was younger, and like I got to that age where you're thinking about going to college. You're in high school. I was a sophomore, junior. I think it was junior year. I really started thinking about it. Like, what am I gonna do? And I don't know. I was in the nerd classes. I was in all the AP classes. So I just like rotated with the same group of 12 people from one room to another all day, and just everybody kind of they had their plan. And in Arizona, it might be different now, but at the time when I graduated high school, all the smart kids in Arizona, you go to U of A if you don't go to somewhere better. Of the 3 state universities we have, the University of Arizona is kind of the one where the smart people go. And if you're in the top, again, this is all back 20 years ago now, so if it's changed, forgive me. But at the time I graduated, if you graduated in the top 2% of your high school class, you got a full tuition waiver for any of the 3 state universities. And the reason in Arizona. And the reason they did that is because too many people of the top of their classes were going to, everywhere else.
And so they're trying to keep them in state.
So you end up with, ASU being kind of a laughingstock in that I think even the Simpsons constantly make fun of them.
So this was a congressional subsidy to stop the brain drain in the state of Arizona.
Yeah, basically, there you go. So the idea was our whole group of people, they were going to go to U of A. Everybody's going to do their own thing, computers or biochemistry or doctors or, whatever. But that's where the smart kids go. I was always a weird outlier because, I don't know, something in my upbringing, I wanted to do the hard things. I wanted to take the difficult path. Like, I wanted it that way. I deliberately challenged myself as much as I could just to, and honestly, this is where the narcissism comes in. I did it because I wanted to prove that I was better than everyone else. It's like...
Okay, so you didn't want to just go to Arizona State with the other guys.
University of Arizona was where it would have gone. And I mean, that would have been fine. That's a perfectly fine fallback plan, and that's probably what I would have done if I hadn't have been accepted to the Air Force Academy. There was a weekend where I took the...
Then you wouldn't have had to deal with daylight savings time.
I still wouldn't know what it was. Still wouldn't know what it was to this day if it wasn't for that. I had taken the pre-SAT, right? The practice SAT when you're a junior. I had scored a 1410 on the PSAT, which is a good score, I guess.
Right, and you got another year of school, which means you're probably going to max it out.
I guess that was the feeling, because I started getting, after I took that, I started getting all these unsolicited letters. And then one of them came in, and it was different than all the others because it came in just a normal number 10 white envelope, where the rest of them were like fancy plastic and colored, and they got stuff on them. This one's a number 10 with just the clear window, and it's got the blue rubber stamp, United States Air Force, like return address label. Like, what am I getting from the military? And it was like this, just an introduction to the service academies. And
wait,
go ahead.
I was expecting some profound story about some kind of family connection to Air Force. You're just saying they had a good piece of junk mail?
Well, hang on, I'm not done yet. Because I took I took it as a dumb piece of junk mail. Like, oh, this is just like all of the other things. Why would I go there? And I like kind of pitched it. My dad he knew what it was. I had no idea. His dad was in the Air Force, my grandfather. And so they were stationed at the Air Force Academy as when he was enlisted, my grandfather. So my dad knew what it was. And so he kind of explained it to me, but I didn't really get it. Like, oh, okay, it's a military college. Woohoo. But then like this is where I feel karma or fate reaching into my life and like just tweaking one little knob, just a dial or two. Because that weekend, this is before DVRs, so I know it wasn't set up. Like, we were watching live cable, and they had a 2-hour special on Discovery Channel about the U.S. military academies. Yeah,
oh, really? Out
of nowhere. That weekend was still...
Okay, so you...
Go ahead.
It wasn't biased just towards Air Force. It was all three.
Right. It was showing all three. Air Force was definitely a part of it. And, so was the Coast Guard Academy. Don't forget the Coast Guard Academy, Ben, because they don't.
Yeah. Okay. So, but the Coast Guard Academy, and don't forget the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, both which have equivalent enrollments and fall under the Department of Homeland Security. But let's just limit it to the DoD.
Okay, fine. Totally derailed the conversation. No, but watching that, and it hit every one of those switches in my brain. Right, like for some reason I wanted to do things the hard way. Like it's super prestigious. It's super hard to get into.
Yes.
Once you get into it, there's no guarantee you'll finish it. Like 2,500 people get it.
Right. They don't just tell you, come here and we'll like make you into a genius. They're like, not everyone can do this.
Not everyone can. Like, you're good enough maybe to ask if you can come. And then we'll probably still tell you no.
Which is bullcrap because, at a regular university, maybe 60% of people that start graduate. At the service academies, it's 80%.
Well, I mean, and that's by design. Like, it's so here. There's part of that you're not getting is that you don't incur a commitment until your first day of class or your junior year. So I know were
you can get 2 free years of college and bail out.
Well, and they load up your classes in the first 2 years so heavily that most people that bail after their sophomore year, they take 1 semester of normal college and graduate. So I mean, it's a smoking deal.
But still, that's only 20% of people that's happening to, and that also includes people that get thrown out for cause.
There are people that get thrown out for cause, and there are people that don't graduate, and there's lots of causes to get thrown out of the military academy.
Okay, so you had this piece of junk mail, you saw the documentary.
And it just like, oh, it's hard? You don't think I can do it? Well, F you, fate and life or deity or whoever is on the other side of this. So it immediately instilled something in my brain that like, this is something that I would be into just because I was that cocky.
Yeah. So was it Air Force or bust? Did you consider Annapolis or West Point?
It was. So I told all the interviewers when they asked me, it's like, is this like you put USAFA? Like, is there other ones? Like, oh, I would want to go to USAFA because I have a grandfather who was in the Air Force. I have this great family tradition of being in the Air Force. And if I don't make it to the Air Force, that'll be very sad for me, but I will apply. Probably to West Point will be my next choice. But in reality, no. It was Air Force or bust. It was Air Force or University of Arizona.
Okay.
I had no intentions of going to the other ones.
Got it.
I don't know why. Looking back, I probably should have hedged my bets and applied for West Point. But I'm glad I didn't because the Army would have been terrible. But I should have had a better plan as a teenager. That's what it is.
Okay. I'm going to tell you something you didn't know about me.
What don't I... There's a lot of things apparently I don't know about you. Ben...
Yeah, being I applied to the Air Force Academy.
Oh, now I feel so bad. Okay.
No, don't. It was 18-year-old Ben before I served my 2-year mission for my church, and it was a 24-page application. It required the congressional endorsement, and I think I did it and I mailed it in, and they sent me back a letter telling me that I had left one section of the application incomplete and I needed to fix it. And then I was busy leaving for my mission in Oregon, and I just never got back to it, and life overcame it, and I never got around to finishing my application.
Okay, you feel happy that happened to you. Okay, like. If people have said like, oh, I wanted to go there but I didn't get in, like, do not lament the missed opportunity. I promise you. It was who was the guy that had to push the boulder up the hill forever? Was that Sisyphus?
Sisyphus.
Yes. I felt like that was a real Sisyphus trial, that place.
All right, well let's get into that a bit. So let's skip over the details of enrollment and stuff like that. And there's a very distinct stereotype that goes along with Service Academy, and I think it's very different from outside of the military versus inside the military. I think I'm vaguely aware of this. That outside the military, there's kind of this perception of elite. And inside the military, it's a little bit different. How would you describe the two stereotypes?
So, from outside the military, the perspective is very few people actually know what they are. Like when I used to tell people I went to USAFA or the Air Force Academy, they kind of give me a weird look. Like it's like West Point for the Air Force, and they get that. People that knew what it was, people that understood what a U.S. Service Academy is, were very impressed. Genuinely, like, oh, holy crap. But inside the military, the perception is commonly and correctly that people coming out of these places are like just have giant swollen heads. They think they're God's gift to the earth. They have huge chips on their shoulder, like the world owes them something. And I didn't like one of the.
But they select for that. It was in the junk mail you got. It was in the documentary you watched. It's in the selection process. They select for that kind of person.
They select and then they reinforce it the entire time. Like every other briefing was like, you are like, this is their tagline for both positive and negative. You are the best of the best. You need to hold yourselves to higher standards. And the other side of it, you are the best of the best. How could you let this happen? But like you can only hear that so many times before you start to believe it. And let me tell you, Ben, I am not like I am very proud that I am not the standard mold-fitting academy guy, because I multiple times in my career I had people look at me and go, "You went to the academy?" Like,
consider that,
and I did. And I turned, and I looked at my, thank you. That's one of the nicest things you can say about me.
Yeah. So that's interesting that they frame both good things and bad things that way. Like, this good thing happened because you're the best of the best. How dare this, how could this bad thing have happened? This should have happened. You're the best of the best.
Yeah. And they shovel feed us the whole time.
So I want to talk for a bit about hazing. Okay. Because hazing, is commonly known in the military. I mean, probably most famously in A Few Good Men, You Can't Handle the Truth. It was about some guy getting killed in a hazing.
Did you order the code red? Did you order the code red?
You're damn right I did. So, I'm aware of that, but it's almost institutionalized in a U.S. Service Academy. When I was in one of my PME schools, I did a report on Benjamin O. Davis, which was the first black man to be accepted to West Point. And man, his life was just a living hell. It was brutal. It was
life.
Just...
They make by design. Life is living hell for freshmen at all of those places. Anyway, by design, on purpose.
Yes. Now imagine that, and then like the worst racism you can imagine on top of that, and that's
I can't imagine that because I just can't.
So what kind of hazing did you experience?
So. It's institutionalized hazing. So there's rules and there's procedures built around it by the higher ups, so if you're a major, you can get selected.
Right. So they're not calling it hazing.
They're not calling it hazing. They're calling it training opportunities. Here's the thing. Training opportunities, when run by other teenagers who were on the receiving end of the same training opportunities a year ago, they get out of hand. And then it crosses over into the hazing.
All right, so give a quick story of an example, because I heard a few good ones today.
What wasn't a haze at that place? It was just a running gag that everything was a haze. That was a phrase that you would say, "Oh, this is such a haze." But all right. So for example, the entire it's so hard to boil it down. For my freshman year, from the moment I stepped into that place in June, all the way until the following April, I was a 4-degree, unrecognized 4-degree. So there's this whole thing you do at the end called recognition where they lay off you and they okay, fine, you can stick around. Before that, though, you're at
which means that you survived the hazing selection
basically,
process. Yeah. Like if you can't make it through this hazing, then you don't deserve to be called one of us.
For those number of months, it's less than a year, but God, it felt so much longer. You're at attention whenever you're not in your bedroom. So you walk like you're marching around. You're only allowed to.
Now, this isn't regular attention, is it? I mean, it's like the extreme position
It's the
of
super
attention.
stract, get your chins in like this, and you push it back.
Yeah.
People can't see my video, but you shove your chin as far back into your neck as you can, and your hands have to be cupped, and your knuckles have to be at a 45-degree angle, and your thumbs have to be along the seams of your pants on the sides.
That just
your shoulders
so
have to be
hazy.
up, back, and down. They do that as an exercise. Get them up, back, and down, and you can do that all day if you want. You had to walk at attention, always on the right side of the hallway. If you ever saw an upperclassman, you had to greet them by name. Good morning, Cadet Brown, Stalag 17. And you had to say, that was my squadron, so I always had to say Stalag 17. If you ever recognized them, if you didn't recognize them, you say, good morning, sir or ma'am, or good afternoon or good evening, or whatever time of day it was. And God help you, Ben, if you said
it wrong,
if there was a group of 35 freaking people walking past you, and you just said good morning, sir and ma'am, and then
that sounds like a 4th-degree horror
and then one
story.
of them pokes her head. It's like, hey, you know who I am? Crap, yes, I do know who you are, but that's not the point. Whatever. There's the campus is enormous, and you're only allowed to walk on. I swear, the courtyard between all the academic buildings in the center of this campus.
I'll post a photo.
It's called the Terrazzo, and it's enormous, and it's made to have full-scale military parades at any time of day or year. And the freshmen that are unrecognized are allowed to run on an 18-inch strip of it on the far outside. And you don't walk, sir. No, you run because you have to be places. You're a 4-degree. So you're always running. You always have everything in your left hand because your right hand has to be free to salute at all times. Calling minutes. All right, so upperclassmen are lazy, and they don't know when stuff is going to happen because they can't be bothered with the schedule.
They're not lazy. They've been a 4th-degree before, and now it's your turn.
And so half an hour before every major event, every meal, every formation, every briefing that happened, every training session, the 4 degrees would go out to the hallway, And then you would have they would spread out up and down the entire squadron in the dorms so everybody could hear. And you have 2 clock watchers. And these are the guys that stand down in the center of the squadron. And they would look at the clock, and when it hit 30 minutes on the button, they would stand out in the middle of the hallway and they would yell, ours was, Stalag, call the 30th minute, please. And then it would start this scripted thing that every freshman had to say in unison. And it was, Stalag, there are 30 minutes until the noon meal. Uniform is blues, athletic jackets, flight caps. Menu for the noon meal includes hamsters, juice, water, and then like all the other things. Oh, condition is condition blue. Stalag, there are 30 minutes until the noon meal. And then you would do that 30, 25, 20, 17, because we're 17, and then 15, and then 15 is when you would tell everybody to go actually go out and get into formation. But during this time, so we're freshmen and we're getting hazed and everybody knows that. And we're announcing to everybody basically, hey, everyone in the squadron, if you're not doing anything, there's a bunch of freshmen standing at attention in the hallway for the next 15 minutes. And we would love if you come out and just mess with us for a while. And so
my mouth is just agape at this. I'm sure there's no end to it, but just this one vignette you're sharing is just mind-boggling.
So we called minutes at least twice a day, if not 3 times a day, for different events that were happening. And then the upper class, after you call the first minute, the upperclassmen would come out and, these kids are standing across from my room, so I'm going to mess with these kids. So you have these little cliques where these 5 people are going to mess with these 10 people, and these 6 people over down the other end of the hallway, they're going to mess with those people. But this is on top of all the other things you're supposed to know as a freshman. We get our little books, and I should have brought it, but we get little books that can fit in your pocket, and they have all of the information about the United States Air Force, United States military, DoD code, laws, regulations, every aircraft that's ever been manufactured, and its silhouette and its stats and everything, all in this little book. And every week, the freshmen, they have this, all right, now you're going to memorize pages 40 to 60 this week. And when I say memorize, Ben, I mean memorize. And the upperclassmen would come out and be like, okay, that's tell me the 3rd verse.
Oh yeah, who was the 3rd commandant of the U.S. Air Force Academy?
But they'll come and say, sing the 3rd verse of the Star Spangled Banner. Did you know the Star Spangled Banner has 5 verses, Ben?
Josh, I know the 3rd verse of the Star Spangled Banner.
Seriously? Of course you do. Of course you do. But.
And thus be it ever when free men shall stand between the lowest and the war. Yeah, I know.
Killing me. Anyway, we were tested on that at the end of every week. You have, not only at the military academy do you have your GPA for the grades, because, oh, by the way, you're going to college during all of this, and you're taking more than what is considered a full-time student. My sophomore year, I had 21 credit hours. My freshman year, I had 14 credit hours.
That's a lot. 21.
21 sucked. That year sucked. But so I've got 14 credit hours. I'm going to school.
How can you study when you're reading minutes off in the hallway?
You don't study. You don't study academically. No, you study militarily. You have your GPA because you're taking college classes. You have your PFA, your physical fitness assessment. It's like a GPA, but for all of your fitness tests that you have to take, because you're still in the military, so you still have to take regular fitness tests. And they're way more strict at the military academies than they are just in the military.
So it's not the same military physical fitness test. It's like a special one.
Oh, make a note. We need to talk about the physical. Let's do it now. All right, we'll do it now. There was 2. There was the the aerobic fitness test, PFT, which is just the normal 1.5 mile run. But it was at the altitude of the Air Force Academy, which if you've
6,600 feet,
7,258 feet above sea level, far above that of West Point or Annapolis. So that's the thing. What's the elevation of the academy? 7,258 feet. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So it's ridiculously high altitude. So and then there's the PFT, the physical fitness test. So this test was you go down into the gym. And you just get, you have a day. You have to do it today. So at some point today, you go down there and you stand in the line. It's like, okay, are you ready to start? I'm ready to start. So, all right, wait for the bell. And it's all timed. The bell goes boom. All right, you have 1 minute. All right, first event was pull-ups. For men, it was a minimum of 7 pull-ups, a maximum of 21 pull-ups. You have 1 minute.
Holy
and crap. Just ripping out pull-ups. Done. Okay. You have 1 minute. The bell rings. Done. You have a minute off. The next is, I think it was a standing broad jump for some stupid reason. Which I'm
Like, what is it?
I'm
What does
six
that
foot
mean?
four. I have never trained for that in my life. I kind of like wheeled back and then took a big long step and then would pass it every time. But I had
Yeah.
friends that were 5'3" that had to train their butts off to make the minimum requirement for the broad jump. So that's not fair.
Wow.
You have a minute to do, like, I think you get 3 tries to get the best score you can, then a minute off, and then you have a minute to do as many sit-ups as possible. The minimum was, I want to say 65 or something for men.
Holy
It was
crap.
no joke.
That's more than 1 a second. That can't be the minimum.
It can't be the minimum. It was like,
It's probably like 54
it was
or
something.
something.
It was a lot. Like, it was no joke. Then you take a minute off, and then you had to do as many push-ups as you can in a minute. And again, it was ridiculously high. That one, I will say, was probably like 40 was the minimum. Mm-hmm. Then, this is the fun part. You get a minute off, and then you have the 600-meter dash. And it is a dash on a high school running track that is a lap and a half. And I think you had 2 minutes was the failing score. So it's not a sprint, but it's just below a sprint. And it's to the point where they lined the track with trash cans at the finish line because people would just hurl their guts out. And these are...
That was a great mental image.
These are not overweight 45-year-old service members that are out of shape. These are college kids living at 7,000-foot elevation doing constant physical fitness that are running and throwing up at the end of this run just to meet the minimum requirements. Now, I, sir, being the smart and or terrible person that I am, always gamed this system because in the regs for the fitness test, if you maxed out 2 events, then you could fail 1, and as long as you still got a passing score overall, then you would still pass the PFT. So I would max the pull-ups, I would max the push-ups, I would max the sit-ups, and then I would literally walk the 600-meter dash. I'm like, this sucks. I don't want to do it. And I'd always go up to the guy at the end and be like, hey, what was my time? And 3 groups had gone in the time it took me to actually like walk mine. And I'd probably get cussed at and he'd tell me to get out of here. But
yeah, you were already doing the drive-through strategy. You were like, no, I don't have to kill myself doing this. So I'm not going to.
I was gamifying the system. I was looking at the rules.
That's something you and I have in common.
Well, and I've been told by the super hardcore military people there at the time, like, oh, I'm looking at this PT score. Why'd you fail the run? Well, I still passed the test, sir. Like, yeah, but you're failing. Like, no, I passed. But you failed this event. But I passed the test, sir. But you're failing. But I passed, sir. And like just this, like them trying to like, you're not doing it enough. And I'm like, yes, I am. Just so that there's a physical thing. This goes back to, I'm calling minutes, and that goes into my military performance average. So I have a GPA, I have a physical PA, and I have a military PA. And so, like, you get tested on this stuff you're supposed to memorize, and if you don't know it, your score drops, and that can get you kicked out.
Even though it felt chaotic, I think you have to admit there is this grand design that they intend for you to feel overwhelmed because that's what's demanded of an officer at war.
So a lot of these are carryovers from Vietnam. They talk about how they had to crank up the time that people were flown, or gosh dang it, the time that people worked their way through the academy from 4 years down to 3 years, and then ultimately down to 2 years towards the end because they were so desperate for pilots. And so, yeah, a lot of that is like you're going to be in incredibly high stress situations, and you need to be able to handle it. You need to be able to make clear, rational decisions regardless of the circumstances. And looking like at the time, that was awful because the whole intent is it was a fire to forge you into a weapon.
Yeah, they're stressing you out on every front. Your physical, your mental, your emotional, deliberately.
The sword can look back on the forge with fondness, but it still didn't like the time it was in it. I will say, like, looking back, like, it sucked. I hated every second that I was there, but I cannot deny that I have only ever reached that threshold of stress in my life maybe 1 or 2 other times. And everything else is just kind of like, man, whatever.
Yeah, I guess it all pales in comparison when you've been through the fire like that. Now, I have to tell you something else you didn't know about me. After I applied to the Air Force Academy and didn't get in, before I served my mission, I went to Brigham Young University for a semester in 1995, and I was in ROTC. And that we did that same PFA test that you described.
Really?
Yeah, at 4,500 feet elevation, not 7,200. So, but I've done the same physical fitness test you just described.
And it sucked.
Yeah, it was terrible. Okay, so you talked a bit about education. I want to go into that a bit more because anyone that's been through university understands, that taking 21 credit hours is a lot, and that's just assuming that you don't have other distractions in your life. Maybe you're on a scholarship or your parents are paying for school, and you can just like study full time, but without having to sit out in the hallway and have the seniors make fun of you while you're reading minutes or whatever. So, how do you feel about like the overall quality of the education you got, and how that all fits into the big picture of what the Military Service Academy experience was?
So. It was a Division I college, aside from everything else that was happening there. So, and everything that entails. I mean, it's fully accredited, all the classes and the education you can expect to receive. I think...
And it's an engineering school.
It's primarily an engineering school, yes. They still have all the fuzzy subjects that you expect them to. Management, psychology, English. General studies is one that a lot of people graduate with, just because...
Oh. I didn't know you could get like a liberal arts degree.
No, it's more of I was on this track and then I failed 2 critical classes and I do not have the time to retake them. So now I'm going to graduate with a general studies degree. Yeah.
What? I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. No, like it was.
That sounds embarrassing.
I knew I wanted to.
Says the guy with an elementary education degree.
I went to the academy knowing that I wanted to be a computer science major. I loved computers. I loved computer science. I loved logic. Programming was great. And I went. A second semester of my freshman year, I went to an academic council and I said, I want to be a computer science major. Because you didn't have to declare until you were sophomore year, right?
Oh, wow.
Well, there's so many core classes that you're forced to take.
Sure. They just fill up your time with gen eds and PE and then like military leadership.
Yes, we do have military leadership requirements. You have to take one course from every school at the academy. So I had to take a management course. I had to take a psychology course. I had to take a philosophy course. I had to take an English course.
Got it.
Everything. But I went to the guy at the comp sci department. I was like, I want to be a comp sci major. And he looked at my schedule and he goes, ooh, I don't know. You might be too late to declare. Like, I'm second semester freshman year. He's like, I don't think we can jam all of the comp sci classes that you need to take into your schedule before you need to take them. And so, he had me take a test and I validated the entry level computer science course. And that was the only reason that I was able to declare computer science as a major, because I didn't have to take, I got one course off of my load.
Huh. Well, it sounds like somebody wasn't being honest with you when they told you didn't declare until your semester.
Well, if I was going to be a management major, I wouldn't have to declare until I was halfway through my senior year. But if you're going to be a hard sciences major, you need to have that locked down early.
How did you feel about the general quality of education?
It was, I think it was like any other college. It's hit or miss, depending entirely on the student's attitude and the instructor that you have. So I can tell you, I had a history teacher that he genuinely loved history, just loved it. And like, he just, and he was a military guy. Like, he was a captain in the military, and he got a tour at the academy teaching history, and he had his history doctorate. And he loved what he was talking about, and he made it interesting, and the topics that he picked for us to study were great, and like that was a great class. At the same token, my junior year, I had my mandatory biology class, and I went into this class, and it was a full bird colonel that was teaching, and he goes, it was the first day of class, he puts it up, he's like, everybody, I'm Colonel, I don't remember his name, we call him Colonel John. I'm Colonel John, I'm going to teach you introductory biology, and this course we're going to go over, he stopped talking, click, 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 click. And he's clicking through his slides and he's not talking anymore. And we're like, what is he doing? And he puts his thing down. He looks and he goes, all right, everybody, I'm going to love with you. This is my last tour. I'm retiring as an 06. I've got a wife that I just married. She's 35. After I get out of here, like after this semester, we're going to go to live in Hawaii. So what do you say that I talk when I feel like talking and the rest of the time you read your textbook and we'll call it even?
Is this for life?
Yeah. Like all the freshmen and
there is a man who's done the calculation that you were talking about. You
like
know.
he there's nothing. Like they've got nothing on him.
There's nothing anyone can do to him.
He's a full bird colonel. Like nobody's gonna call him down for it. None of his students are. What are we gonna do? Like all the freshmen and the sophomores look around like, is this real? Like what's happening? And all the juniors and seniors,
this is a trap.
All the juniors and seniors, we slammed our notebook shut. We're like, sir, we're good with that. Go. Tell us about your girlfriend. She hot?
Wow. That would never happen at a regular university. It couldn't. There's too many checks and balances in
Right.
place.
And so, like I was saying, so I feel like my education that I got was, it was offered to me as very, very good education. But I was so jaded and just so done with that place, Ben. Like, I can't even, like, it crushed me in so many ways, emotionally and physically, that by the time I was halfway through my junior year, I can show you my transcript right now. You can watch my grades plummet and just like bottom out and be like, I just passed.
They have to recognize that as a potential cost of that environment. What % of people would you say that happens to?
Just flat burnout. Oh,
yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is like, whatever statistic I come up with is ridiculously skewed, because we're not talking about a standard population. We're talking about people that are cherry picked, and like you said, it's bred and selected to be the best of the best. I mean, you were talking the alpha of the alpha males go to this place.
That has to contribute to the stereotype.
Oh, absolutely.
So let me talk as an outsider.
Yeah, no, please.
You know, in the regular Air Force, once you commission, we're all second lieutenants, right? It doesn't matter whether you went to OTS or ROTC or USAFA. We're all second lieutenant.
With my experience in the real Air Force, I can tell you right now, the best officers come from OTS.
And when out of those 3 accession sources, I tried to look it up and I couldn't find something I thought was reliable about what the ratios are. But, you know, the academy doesn't represent the lion's share of the officers in the Air Force. You know, it's 900 a year out of there and probably equal or greater from the other 2 sources, mostly ROTC. And then there's this... You know, they don't give you I graduated from the Air Force Academy button that you wear on your uniform, but a lot of you guys wear those parachute wings. And when you see a second lieutenant with the parachute wings on it, you know he's an academy graduate. And you already are thinking in your mind about the stereotype.
You're also forgetting, excuse me, sir, I am wearing my class ring right now.
And the class ring. Sure. And what you expect, I'll just be candid, you expect them to be a bit of a dick.
Yep.
You expect them to be kind of full of themselves. Yep. You expect them to think that they're higher ranked than they actually are, and converse casually with very high-ranking officers in a way that would be totally inappropriate in the regular
And I can
Air Force.
explain that, and that's because everybody that we interact with is either lieutenant colonel or higher, across the board all the time.
Right. So you're just utterly desensitized against like the fear of colonels.
Exactly.
Right. From
my
the
colonel. The guy who blew off the biology class was a full bird colonel, talking about how hot his 35-year-old girlfriend was.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's that stereotype. But you know what? Sometimes you'll see a guy that doesn't have the wings on, and it'll just come out in some kind of casual context that he went to the academy, and he'll be like, really? I didn't pin you for an academy graduate. Which is kind of like saying, you know, you don't fit my idea of the stereotype of somebody that graduated.
You went to the academy? That's weird. You're not a huge douche.
Yeah, and some of my best friends have been academy graduates. So let's transition a bit. You know, we've talked about the education, the culture, the hazing. The academy's kind of been very prominent, not just the Air Force Academy, the other academies as well, in the press for, you know, about every other year or so, having this just otherworldly, monumental scandal. So what were the scandals that happened while you were
First of all,
academy?
dial it back a bit. Monumentally otherworldly. Come on.
Dude, come on. Google academy and scandal, and I bet you'll have one in the last 12 months with like 100 news
I know
pieces
you
on
will.
it.
But then, all right, so the big scandal that happened when I was there.
Wait. Time out. Because you're telling me to dial it back, but I'm not gonna do that. America looks at its service academies. You know, while we have this culture of selecting the best of the best, they perceive it as that. And so whenever there's a scandal at the service academies, it's like a referendum on the virtue of the soul of America.
Granted, and that's all the arguments that I always hear when we're talking about that. You know, you're the best of the best. How dare you let this happen?
Yes.
So the big scandal that happened while I was there, that came to light, was, for lack of a better term, it was a rape scandal. And they found out that there were female cadets that were being sexually assaulted at the academy. I don't know the details of the specific cases. I never wanted to. And I don't want to. I'll make this very important and very clear that I do not want to undermine the importance of how bad and wrong sexual assault, sexual misconduct is, and I don't want to undermine the things that actually happened and the bad things that went down at the academy. I don't want to downplay that at all. These things are terrible. They should never have happened, but they did. The problem is when you go to the academy, you're the best of the best. You're the soul of America, like you're saying, like you're held to a higher standard. That's all true, but it's also a group of, kids out of high school sowing their oats for the first time. This is still college. And regardless of, not to undermine the legitimacy of these claims, but regardless of how bad the sexual misconduct at the academy was at the time, pick any state university in the country.
Sure, Arizona State.
Pick ASU would have, it would like just...
There's fraternities, there's sororities,
normalize it for population, and they still would have blown us out of the water. Like, it would have been ludicrously higher.
Yeah. I get it. You're definitely held to a higher standard.
And in a lot of ways, they are, we're held to a higher standard. We hold each other to a higher standard, and, we don't let this stuff happen, but we're all still people. We were all still high school, or college-age kids. No means no hadn't been a big thing. We had... I can't even tell you how many briefings we got about how to actually get consent. It was somebody made a DOD style sexual consent form that you had to fill out
one of those satirical government forms.
It wasn't really.
I'll see if I can dig it up and put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's and then the consenting party fills out their information here. They are consenting to, and they check off the boxes, that kind of thing. But and that's all satire and that's all fun and that's playing down some of these things. Now, that's one side of it. Just population-wise, it wasn't as bad as any place else would be, and we're still more people in here. It shouldn't have happened. Yeah, I get it, but
But you're talking about population. One fact we have to point out is that the student body of the Air Force Academy fluctuates at around 20% female.
Right. Well, wow, 20% that high? Oof, wow.
Yeah.
So when I was there, it was 1 in 8. So is that 20%?
Yes, that's 20%.
All right, so no, Bennett, 20% is 2 out of 10, which is 1 out of 5.
Okay, that's 12%.
Got it. So when I was there, it was 12%. And again, these are the alpha of the alphas of high school, right? And we're all competing for this tiny little population of women who are. Yeah. I dated a couple girls at the academy, and they deserve to be there. And they were all great, and they're very smart and incredibly motivated women. But they are not your standard person in the world. I will tell you that. You pick a lady off the street, they can't go to the academy. These are, if you're talking about the top whatever percent for men that go there, the top percent of the women that have to compete with the men that want to go there and then get selected over them is ludicrous. So, in another thing, not all of these were legitimate. I know this for a fact, and I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm not trying to say it wasn't.
You're talking about
the rape scandal again, because there was one girl that I knew personally. I knew her, and she got kicked out for academics. She was on probation every semester that she was there, and she got kicked out because she flunked 4 classes in a semester. You're done. You're gone. And then she was on Oprah or some talk show 6 months later talking about how she could have been an astronaut or, a fighter pilot if this terrible thing hadn't have happened to her. And now I'm not saying this terrible thing didn't happen to her. Maybe it did, and maybe that affected and threw off her academics. But based sheerly on her academic performance, there was no way she was going to be an astronaut. No chance.
What would you say that the climate was such that she felt like if she were to try to seek help at that time, that she would have been, thought of as a narc? I know. There's the what's it called, the Academy Code,
the honor code,
the honor code. Was it against the culture at the time for someone to speak out about abuses?
I can't, for sexual assault specifically. I can't. I have no frame of reference to even say if it was or not.
Yeah, and I don't want to get wrapped up in presentism where we're evaluating times of the past by today's standards.
Well, it's not. So there was a weird culture about narking on other people, though. it was this weird dual existence, this juxtaposition in your head where, yeah, everybody swore up and down the honor code, like legitimately swore, held up their hand and swore the oath, I will not lie, steal, or cheat, or tolerate anyone who does. And at the same time, just that floating in the back of your head, like, you got to cover for your bros. We're all a team here. And they beat that into you when you're unrecognized freshman. It's like, it's you, your class, like you handful of people against everyone else. You all have to stick together or else you're going to die alone. And so, like, these two opposing, conflicting ideas are pounded into you. And, like, there's no winning. There's just flat no winning.
So, getting away from the scandal piece, and I'm sure that was just a lot of scrutiny and additional stress to all of you guys.
So, you know how crap rolls downhill? The Secretary of the Air Force at the time was being yelled at by, I guess, the Joint Chiefs of Staff or the President or whoever, and he took the time to fly out to Colorado Springs, put us all in a giant room, and just called us all rapists to our face. And I'll tell you what, Ben, he just unloaded. Like, it wasn't even a structured briefing. He didn't have notes or nothing.
I hope you didn't take it personal. Like, the cameras were all there. He was just putting on a show. Sleep
because that's the only...
Just like you did when you attended the football games.
That's the only place you can catch extra sleep is when you're being briefed at by people. This is why, actually, as a side, to bring it a lighter side, that's why I'm a lifetime member of the alumni for the USAFA alumni, because they gave us a briefing about it in basic training, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, they said, "Sign this." I said, "Okay," and I signed that. And they took a garnishment from my paycheck for a few months, and now I'm a lifetime member of the Alumni Association.
Okay. Now, okay, so I want to put all that aside and just talk about relationships. So you're in a climate where 20% of the student body is female. There's this video that's burned in my mind. It predates YouTube, but some brilliant student had just sat down in Flash, Macromedia Flash Player, and animated this song that some other student had written about what it was like to try to have a romantic relationship at the academy. I'll put it in the show notes. It was called Falcon Love. I'm sure you probably seen it.
But it's been 15 years, Ben.
It's a duet. The guy sings to the girl, and the girl sings to the guy, and he sings to her about how she's not that great, but she'll have to do because he doesn't have a lot of choice. And then she sings back to him, basically, yeah, I could have anybody I want. Why should I choose you? And then they kind of just both settle, but at the end it turns sweet, and they both kind of like each other. So. But it just made me wonder, did you have any relationships while you were there, or what was it like?
My entire junior year, I dated a girl. I'm not going to say her name because she might be a listener. Probably isn't, but I'm not going to risk it. She was great. I did really like her. At one point, I had purchased a engagement ring for her. Yeah. Wow. Nicole has that ring now. She like this is funny. Like no, it's not like it's a I hid it from her. It's like, oh, why do you have this ring? Like, oh, I bought this for you. Like, no, she knew right like from the oh, this was the engagement ring I bought for my college girlfriend before she broke up with me. She's like, oh, can I wear it? Sure. And so it's kind of a joke that she doesn't care.
All right. Well, you don't have to recount the whole story if I'm taking you through like a painful
memory. No. Time heals all wounds, and it was for the better. Like we had great times together. But I wasn't emotionally mature enough to handle like that kind of commitment at the time. And I'm glad that it ended the way... No, I'm not glad that it ended the way that it did, but I'm glad that it did end. What did you want to know about having a relationship at the academy? Like, did you have to break all the rules to actually have relations with women? The answer is yeah, you did. Because there was rules. If a person of the opposite gender was in your room, not only did you have to have the door open and all the lights on, you were not allowed to be on the same horizontal surface as them.
That sounds like an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Sit, stand, lean.
So, like, I rattled those off faster than I could make them up. Those are all real rules that had to like exist.
I don't know. You can make stuff up pretty fast.
The way that we got around that one is we started hanging up blankets. Like the door would be open, but we'd hang up a blanket like from the cabinets that were over the door. So like there was like a drop cloth in front of it. But they got wise to that and then amended the rules so nothing could be obstructing the doorway.
Yeah. They just put you guys in a pressure cooker. I mean, you got all this pressure and so much stuff going on and all your academics and there's no fraternity.
And we can't even get laid, Ben.
Yeah. So like, what you've got to be venting all of that tension some way. What was it for?
Oh, we made up stupid ways to have ridiculous amounts of fun. Always after hours and always when nobody was around. And let's see. Midget tossing was one of our favorites. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so you line the hallway with mattresses from everybody's beds, pair off into teams, get some of the biggest guys here and some of the smallest guys there, and see who can throw their small guy the farthest.
I assume the small guys were willing volunteers.
They were willing volunteers, and they were fully aware of the potential to get hurt.
Okay, because a guy told me a story today about somebody breaking their back.
That's a real thing that happens. We always layered our mattresses like 3 deep, which made it hard to toss, but it was safer.
All right. I've never participated in midget tossing, and you had no actual little people.
No. These were just the smallest guys we could get. Yeah. So the teams that always lost were always picking the small girls. But the girls, they just ball up and they just get thrown. We always picked this guy because he was the best midget to toss, because he would put his, grab my arms, and he would put his arms up. And then as we were throwing him, he would pull his arms down to put more, his energy into the throw.
And then would he make a running motion in the air? That's what I'm imagining.
No, we always throw him horizontal. So it's more like a dive. You see those dogs do the long jump off the piers?
Oh,
It was like that,
okay.
like head forward and back arched, like flying through the air.
Wow, I wonder where he's at now.
I have no idea. The floors were all this very high grade linoleum that was there was no seams or cracks anywhere.
Wait, let me guess. You put laundry soap on the floor and got it wet?
Oh yeah, and you could slide for miles because the dorms were just long rectangular buildings. And from one end of the building, you could look down this hallway, and it would crunch down. The perspective would go to a dot before you could see the end of the hallway. So you would just
right. I've been in them.
Just slide forever. That was fun. And yes, people did break collarbones running into the alcoves. So that's a thing. I have a scar on my knee to this day from terrazzo sailing. That was one of my favorites to do. So the academy is on this location in Colorado Springs where it's on the foot of a mountain, which makes the worst weather patterns of all time. It's always windy and stormy. Right. It's just the worst. So there's always this ridiculous wind that comes howling off the mountain, to such an extent that they had to put an artificial hill on part of the campus.
At one corner of the
parade ground, because the wind would come in at certain angles and shatter every window in one of the academic buildings, but the hill broke it up just the perfect way that it wouldn't happen anymore. Anyway.
Wow. Good job,
right?
engineers.
Engineering school. It's good for something. But in the middle of the night, we'd go out on the terrazzo if it was a particularly windy night. We didn't have anything going on. We had these really robust office chairs that the government provided us with. And so you would lean back in your office chair, and you would take a bed sheet, and you would tie a corner to each ankle, and you'd have the other corners in your hands. And then you would just, pick your feet up and then throw the other corners up in the air, and the wind would catch it and turn into this giant sail and just start pulling you at 35 miles an hour down this concrete parade ground.
That sounds dangerous and awesome.
Both of those things. And the scar on my knee came from when I was doing it one night, and my super high quality government office chair, one of the wheels bit, just locked up. And I felt like you see in action movies where a guy gets thrown out of a car and just rolls forever. Just
and I bet you high-fived everybody.
High five. Yeah, that was great. I'm going to go back to my room. And limping with this blood stain coming out of my sweatpants.
Oh, man.
Now, that was the safer version. There was the unsafe version that was way more fun. We had these big laundry carts that were probably 6 feet long by 2 feet wide and 4 feet tall that you could hang your dry cleaning in, that had big rubber wheels on the bottom.
I've seen those. The center of gravity is kind of high.
But you would get 4 or 5 guys in it with a sheet at the front, and those suckers would just go. And incredibly dangerous.
Okay, so all that nonsense was kind of helping you guys blow off some steam. I assume you also did a lot of gaming while you were there. But what were... So you occasionally got caught. What were the punishments? What kind of stuff could happen to you?
Mostly it was restrictions of privileges that we didn't really have. So it was like you would lose You would lose passes.
You can no longer date. That's okay. I wasn't
Well,
anyway.
we had a handful of passes that you were able to use to leave the base. And so, which was a ridiculous joke for freshmen and sophomores, because it was 7 miles from the campus to the front gate, and you're not allowed to have a car until you're a junior. And then from the front gate to town was another 10 miles on a freeway. So unless you want to hike 17 miles, you're not using your afternoon pass anyway. Then as a junior and a senior, I think you had 3 passes in a semester to go off campus for a day and then come back. Nobody recognized. When I was there, we just ignored it. You just left and then came back
yeah, it was just too much trouble.
Yeah, but now I've heard that they actually scan your ID card at the gate. The enlisted personnel scan your ID card, and if you're not signed out in the digital system from your squadron, you get in trouble. So,
yeah, pretty soon it's going to be like Minority Report, and they can just scan your retina wherever you go and know where you are
I'm
at all times.
surprised they don't have that already. But so they would restrict your privileges that way. If you got in serious trouble, you could go on some kind of probation. They had 5 or 6 different kinds of probation. Tours. Oh, how could I forget tours? So I never marched a tour. I was supposed to.
You never marched a tour?
I was supposed to, and I got out of it by...
Wait, is that possible? Does anyone go to the academy and not do the stupid thing where you're just marching around the parade ground?
No, that's what it is. So one tour is you're in full service dress with the wheel cap, with your chin strapped down. Not on your chin, but over your lower lip, because that's where it's supposed to go for some stupid reason. And your rifle, your M1 Garand, old school style, in your crook of your arm, and you march it's maybe 25 yards, and then you halt, and you do an about face, and you march another 25 yards. Okay,
so this is a silly military
one
punishment.
tour is doing that for an hour.
Holy crap!
And so
wait. You did 4 years at the academy and never did this once.
No, Ben. All right, so here's things that you need to know about me. I'm super lame, and I went there thinking it was a military academy, so I followed all the rules. Which, which
was it against the rules to sail around the parade ground at night with the laundry carts?
It was at night, and I didn't get caught. So
that's not following the rules.
Okay, fine. During the day, I followed the rules. How about that? Daytime.
No, you didn't. You fell asleep in briefings.
Yep, I did that. Yeah.
You refused to run during the 600-yard dash.
That was within the rules, sir.
You did a risk assessment against what you could get away with.
That's probably right.
You didn't keep the rules. Yeah. You just didn't break the
okay,
no
yeah, that's fair. Now, I was assigned tours, but I never marched them. And here's why. During combat survival training, CST, everybody, you go through that from your freshman to sophomore summertime. You go through combat survival training. And it's it's a haze, and part of the haze is that everybody gets tours for the stupidest things. And so I was given 200 tours, I think, at one point while I was in.
200 hours marching back and forth in service dress carrying
That's
M1 Garand.
That's a pretty standard punishment, sir. I knew guys that were, what did they call it? I can't remember. I forgot this. They had the centurions and the millennials, the guys that had to march upwards of thousands of hours of tours. You would get
And they actually did them?
Well, people that were on, if you were on a hardcore probation, then you were strictly accounted for, when doing your tours.
But how did you get assigned 200 and not do a single
because
one?
I was told, you have 200 tours, you need to go get them done. Okay. And then everybody's and then everybody went, hey, we're going to go march. It was on a weekend. We're not doing anything today. We're going to go march our tours, because they had the set schedule. And you coming? I'm like, no. It's but you have tours. You have to. I'm like, I don't think these are real tours. If these tours follow me to the academic year, if they come out of this little weird summer program haze and my military guy, when I get back to my squadron, says, hey, you got 200 tours on your record, then I'll march the tours. Guess what, Ben? Guess what?
They
didn't make it because it was a joke.
But that just shows you made a success. You made a correct risk assessment of this situation. So, but didn't you have friends that did them all?
I did have friends that did them all.
Yeah. I was very much like what you're describing in college. I was in classes where my teachers would tell me all this nonsense I'd have to do, and I would just go, I'm not doing that. And they're like, but you have to. I'm like, well, what grade are you going to give me if I don't? And they said, a C. And I'm like, okay, I'll take a C.
Yes.
Then. They're like, but you have to do it. And I'm like, well, you just said if I don't do it, you'll give me a C. So you give me the C, and I won't do it.
Yeah, and this is, like you said, it's cost-benefit analysis, right? This is going to cost me this much more effort, but I'm willing to accept this reward. So forget it.
Right. Yes. So did your brother start school there before you left?
It seems like you're under the impression that Alex went to the academy. He did not.
He didn't?
Alex, he applied. Okay. He did not get accepted. He got a full ride scholarship for ROTC to Embry-Riddle in Northern Arizona instead.
That's right.
And
I remember
we both will say that was the best thing that could have happened to him. Like, I remember he swears up and down that he didn't do this, but I swear up and down that he did. I was a senior, Ben. It was Friday night before an inspection the next day, and I had my head underneath my sink cleaning the water trap with metal polish to make sure that the little U-joint on my drain was clean and shiny for the inspection the next day. And my brother called me on my cell phone just to let me know how drunk he was.
Okay, that's good, because that leads to another question I want to ask. What were the rules and culture surrounding the consumption of alcohol for people, for 18 to 21-year-old?
So it was a juxtaposition of you are all the best of the best, and how you should hold yourself to these ridiculous high standards, along with the idea that alcohol has always been a strong part of military culture. Like, I've never been in a colonel's office who didn't have hard alcohol on display. You know what I mean? Like, in the military, active duty. That's a standard thing. That's a normal thing. So
it's diminishing, but yes.
They had a bar on campus that was open if you were of age called Hap's Place. And that was Henry Hap Arnold. And I was never of age at the academy. Well, no, that's not true. The second semester senior year, I was of age for that time. But I never went to Hap's Place because I didn't learn how to drink properly until I was like 24. But that's a whole nother story that we can talk about. And it was constantly waxing and waning from, let's just we're trying to treat them like young officers and professionals. We need to give them the opportunity to go out and be that, to, I can't believe how stupid you all college kids are, and we're going to lock this thing down and you're never going to have any fun ever again.
If I were going to describe the military culture surrounding alcohol, it's come so far from that. It doesn't even look like it originated from the same place. I mean, it particularly with officers, the idea and negative connotations of having any type of association or problems with alcohol is so negative that some officers will either quit drinking entirely or have a complete abstinence policy when they have any potential to be near or observed by anyone.
And you see, that's too much. That's too much. If you trust these people with the ability to kill people and break things, but you can't trust them with a beer, you can't have it both ways. Either
but it kind of goes back to that, these are a representative of our society, and there's these incidents that happen, and, then the secretary's putting on a show for the press, and he comes out and shoots people out. I mean, you heard, my experience when I told you the story of the Italian job, about, you immediately grasped the implications of what it meant for my commander's career if it came out that he had a member of his unit get killed because they'd been consuming alcohol.
Right, but at the same time, we have to live in a world where you can trust who are supposed to be professional military like soldiers. You have to be able to trust them to make correct decisions and know their limitations. And
we have this love-hate relationship with this. There used to be this culture of, the fighter pilot squadrons all had a bar that belonged to the squadron, and at 2:00 on Friday the beer light was on, and now they've closed those things down and shut and completely decommission them and make them it's a witch hunt.
I don't even. It's just one of those things. So, Hap's Place was apparently fun. A lot of my friends went there, and they said it was great. Up until the point where there was a guy who, this is a standard thing, doing the fireman's pole. So the terrazzo in the middle of the campus is actually the 4th floor. There's 3 floors below that, all the way around. So the dorms go down below that. You can go into the stairwell and go up or down. And you can enter on ground level, go down 3 flights, and then exit on ground level. It's the weirdest setup. But so people would go to Hap's place. Hap's place would close, and they would stumble back to their rooms. And there's these street lights that come up from the one ground floor and hang over the other ground floor. And so they would do the fireman's pole where they would jump I think it's like a 3-foot gap in air and grab the light pole and slide down the 3 floors. Well, it was all fun and games until somebody jumped and missed the light pole somehow and fell 3 floors because he was drunk.
Oh, no.
No, he was totally fine because he was drunk. So he stayed loose. He landed across his entire body. I think he probably stood and went woo after that. I mean, he went to the hospital, and of course he had broken bones, but he didn't die. But then it got...
But did you die?
But after that, like, they implemented a policy. Okay, people, like, they shut down Hap's place for a while, and then...
Yeah, that's that knee-jerk military.
But then, like,
action,
when they opened it back up, you could feel... like the compromises that were made to get it back open, because like, okay, you can go in there, but only this many people can be in there at a time. And there has to be a chaperone of this rank of actual military officer or higher. And they had this rotating schedule of majors and lieutenant colonels that would go in there, and they would,
that is such a military
their role
response.
was to be,
let's set up an additional duty for all of our people that are already overtasked.
So I was told by people that continue to go to Hap's place that there was 2 types. There was the one type that was like, hey, how many of you had? Come over here. You're on my list. That's your first? Okay. You get 1 more. That's it. And then there was the other end of the spectrum where it's like, hey, everybody, get a picture and gather around. I'm going to tell the coolest fighter pilot story you've ever heard.
Huh. But you didn't go there.
But I didn't go there because
you were
here's
too
the
young.
problem. So they did the scare tactic on me, right? And so they said like, oh, you get that questionnaire at the beginning of the year as a freshman, like, was there alcoholism ever in your family? And like, there at the time, I believed that there was, like, not in a negative way, but like, oh, people have said this in my hearing that there is alcoholism in the family. Yeah. So yes, there is. And so then, unbeknownst to me, checking that box, it might as well have said, oh, do you want to sign up for a 6-hour extra class on a Saturday? Yes, please sign me up. And so,
but they're teaching you an important lesson you'll need for the rest of your military career early on.
Yes. How many drinks do you drink? Oh, I can't possibly drink more than 1 drink like in a month. Like, I would get so tipsy and drunk and ridiculous. Said the guy who, as we've been doing this podcast, this is my 3rd beer.
You should see what the nuclear weapons maintenance guys do for like their medical interviews. You know, like, have you ever had a medical issue ever in your life? No, sir, I have never even taken aspirin.
I believe, yeah.
Do you ever consume alcohol? What is that? You know,
I heard about alcohol once. I don't think it's for me.
Yeah. Have you ever experimented with drugs?
It's like, what are drugs?
No.
Oh, I did take a child's Tylenol when I was like 7. Did not care for it.
And I have my doctor's note. Yes. So, you know, I want to ask you about like your engineering degree and your project that you did, and you know what you did during your summers and your extra stuff. But we've run kind of long, so maybe we can revisit this topic at some time in the future. But I want to give you a couple minutes to kind of sum it up. You know, let me rattle off a few questions here. You know, like, how do you feel? What's your perspective on like the service academy's role in society? Would you recommend that someone else go to the academy? What did you like about it? What do you remember fondly? You know, sum it up.
So, the punchline for my academy experience was, I'm glad that I did it, but I would never do it again. Not in a million years, not for $1 million. Like, there's no way. It was soul crushing in ways that I just all right, so I guess the easiest way to describe how much it affected and impacted me is I still have nightmares, and I still wake up in the middle of the night in a sweat thinking that I'm late for a class or that I haven't made it to a military formation that I was supposed to be in. Like, I tell my wife, I have them probably a couple of times a month where I wake up in a cold sweat from an academy nightmare. And like in these dreams, like I can feel my brain trying to fight it because like in my dream, like, wait, no, I was a captain. No, wait, I got out. I'm not even in the military. And then somehow my dream like wraps around. I was like, oh, no, you came back for your graduate degree. Like, oh, crap. Why did I come back here for my graduate degree?
Do you dream like that about anything else in life?
Like I have random one-off stress dreams every once in a while about doing pools.
Dude, you're describing PTSD.
No, but it's not. Maybe a really light version of PTSD. Just like this is the level of PTSD that you have to have that the sword has from the forge, right? This is the PTSD that keeps you hard.
Okay, I like that metaphor. I think that keeps it in context. You don't wake up in the fetal position.
No, I just wake up and like, damn it, am I ever going to be over this? And the answer is no, and that's because the stress threshold was by design the highest that it could possibly be without driving people literally insane. And because they are trying to forge weapons and professionals. They're trying to take the cream of America's youth and turn them into warriors. And not just any warrior, but like the best warriors. Like it's this.
Do you think they succeed?
No, I don't. I think they break a lot more people than... There's a lot more horror stories and a lot more like bitter, jaded people like me than there are 5-star military officers that are going to revolutionize warfighting that come out of these places. Yeah. Is the cost worth the benefit? I have no idea. Who knows? I don't even think anybody cares about that. But that's all neither here nor there. These are big topics. Like if somebody asks me, if my son comes and asks me, if he says, I want to go to the Air Force Academy, I'm not going to discourage him, but I'm damn sure going to make sure that he knows what he's getting himself into. Like, son, I want to let you know, like, that is your decision. If you want to do that, like, I will support you every step of the way. It was by far, hands down, the most difficult thing emotionally, physically, and spiritually that I've done in my entire life, and I would never do it again. But if you want to struggle, if you want to put yourself through that, if you think you can handle it, and if you think you'll be a better person coming out the other side, then I will be there for you. But like, it was amazing and traumatic, or amazingly traumatic. Maybe that's what it is. At the same, all right. So it wasn't all negatives. Like I came out with a quality education. I came out with a very high stress threshold. I came out knowing what I could take and what I couldn't take. Like I know my limits. I came out with friends that like they'll just be my friends forever. Like some of them I haven't talked to in years, decades. And if one of my friends called me up from the academy and said, "Hey, I need a place to crash," like open arms, baby. I've got a room right here for you. Just you can't. Bonds forged in blood and fire, I guess. We weren't at war, but It sucked. It sucked. I mean.
Well, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, my PTSD college experience. Yeah, there you go.
It's fascinating, man. I'd consider it doing myself, and I don't know what I might be saying now if I had gone through it.
It changes you. It changed me in ways that I couldn't comprehend, and I didn't understand until much later in my life. And that's a whole nother, like we can get super deep on the psychosomatic changes that I've gone through in my life because of the academy. Or we could wrap up this wonderful episode 12 of the Bad at Magic podcast with like us on Facebook, comment on the subreddit, check out our YouTube videos.
No, I did that earlier. But what I do want to say is you had come up with an idea that I think we could do to get our audience involved. So for those of you that are listening, if you'd like to participate, you've heard Josh and I talk from time to time about evaluating fantasy or science fiction intellectual properties by Brandon Sanderson's Rules of Magic. And Josh and I have had a fun time doing that. So what we'd like to do is kind of like an episode where we go through a bunch of different like universes of storytelling and examine their magic systems. So we're going to come up with a list on our own, but if you'd like to participate and make some suggestions, we'll set up a subreddit, a discussion in the Bad at Magic subreddit, r/Bad at Magic, and probably on Facebook as well. And you can go, and if you want to comment on this episode on the website, and just give us your suggestions if you have a storytelling universe that you'd like us to evaluate and give a grade to of their execution of their magic system. We'll go through a bunch of those.
If you be warned, if you say Frozen and you want us to analyze the magic system in the movie Frozen, be prepared to be disappointed because I'm going to tear that one apart.
I love it. Frozen's on the list. We'll add some others. It'll be fun. So Josh, thanks for sharing your story and your life experience at the Air Force Academy. I ask you all those questions just because it fascinates me that, like you said, the forge that the students go through there. And next time we'll keep it light and just have a good time talking about silly magic
Yeah,
stories.
I got into this wanting to talk about one of my favorite card games, and you're digging up like the worst parts of my past, man.
I drove you to drink 3 beers.
Always good talking to you, buddy.